Welcome to the Foul Play YouTube channel. New series, Reading with the Crew. Brendan, all about Brendan, the entrapment of Brendan Dassey. Part 1.
Thank you so much, Jack61, and welcome everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Dr. Silkman, and I'm from the Foul Play team. And as Jack said, today we have a brand new series for you guys. We've been away for a couple of weeks. Well, the Reading with the Crew team has been away for a couple of weeks. Neville and I and others on the Foul Play team have been working very hard to put a brand new series together. And we'll be commencing that very, very soon. Thank you so much for your support. And guys, before we start, joining us, our esteemed panel members, we have Jack61. Welcome, good sir. How are you coming along?
Thank you very much. Doing very well, Doc. And just been busy, with 14 things here and 27 things over there. Just always something going on, and been working pretty hard about trying to get us some, it's new documentation. It's old documentation, but new for us. Still working on that. And I'll talk a little bit more about some documentation I told Doc last night. It's pretty embarrassing on my part. I told Doc last night about it, but I'll talk more about it at the end of when we get finished, about some things that I found that I already had. And anyway, that's a whole other story. Really embarrassing too. Anyway.
Not at all.
Hello to everyone in the live chat, and of course to my fellow panel members. This is going to be interesting but hard to get through. But we need to do it for Brendan.
Yep, for sure. Thank you so much, there, Jack61. And next, I believe we have a birthday girl, Cherie. I don't recall. Welcome and happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm 26 and doing well, or not. Welcome, everybody, and welcome to Reading with the Crew.
Awesome. And next, we have my partner in crime, Neville. Neville, how are you coming along?
Hello, boss. I'm doing great, actually. It's a beautiful day here in sunny California. 72, kind of humid. My hair is a mess, but that comes with the territory. So all is well in Beverly Hills. I'm so happy to be here after a little break. And let's go. Let's do it.
Awesome.
Now tell me.
Yes.
Dr. Silkman, how's everything down under?
Everything down under is pretty good. My hair's a little bit messed up as well, what's left of it. No, things are going well. And I'm really proud and very privileged to be a part of this team and to be doing this new podcast series. Thank you so much for your help and for everybody's help. I can't wait to get started. But
pleasure. And I just want to tell everybody in the chat that I will be under the Foul Play, username? Username. So we'll be monitoring your questions and comments. And as always, we'll discuss same in the session, the Q&A session at the end of the chat. Okay?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Neville. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. So we don't waste any time, Jack61, let's make a start and let's have a look at the very first slide. So the way the series is going to run, this particular series, I'm going to do an introduction. It's a fairly lengthy introduction to basically set the stage of what this podcast series is all about. And then we're going to have panel members read various documents out. Well, look, guys, welcome everyone. As I said, this is a brand new series, a brand new Reading with the Crew series, and it's entitled The Entrapment of Brendan Dassey. This is about his story. This is about Brendan. It's not about Stephen Avery. It's not about Bobby Dassey. It's about Brendan Dassey and his journey and what happened to him. This was a very hard series of podcasts to put together. There was a lot of angst, a lot of anxiety. It's a very, very tough topic to cover, but we feel that Brendan Dassey has been neglected over a long period of time. As you know, with all the recent filings involving Stephen Avery, and also Bobby Dassey and Kathleen Zona, a lot of attention has been drawn away from Brendan Dassey and his narrative. So, guys, we have a brand new series for you. We're going to take our time. We're not going to rush. What we're going to try and do is make the podcast slightly shorter, if possible, mainly because of the subject matter that we're covering. It's pretty heavy going. But it is a very important story that needs to be told. And all of us here on the Foul Play team, we want to say a big thank you for your support, for your encouragement, for your comments. We read all of them and we react to them accordingly. Thank you so much. We also want to thank all of our mods and our super mods who put all this show together and who give us a little bit of sanity by fielding your questions and getting things going in the background. We thank you so much. So what are we going to be doing today in this particular series? We're going to be doing a deep dive analysis into Brendan Dassey. This is not going to be a 5-minute job. We're going to be doing a deep dive analysis because his story needs to be told. It's very, very important that his narrative is told. Also, we're going to be reading out the critical interrogations. As you know, Brendan Dassey was interrogated multiple times. There are certain critical interrogations that we must cover. That's very, very important. We're going to be reading them out. Now, in a lot of occasions, you see that a lot of Brendan's interrogations are online, and they're very, very difficult to go through by playing a video. We're not going to do that. We're actually going to read these interrogations word for word. We're going to take our time. Members of the Foul Play team are going to read them. So you guys can see and read and hear what Brendan Dassey had to endure during these interrogation sessions. Also, we're going to be looking at specific trial testimonies, and we're going to be reliant on official documents. That's critical. So we're going to present it. I don't know how many podcasts we'll end up doing, but we're going to leave no stone unturned when it comes to Brendan and his story. Guys, if you enjoy what we do, please subscribe, put your DNA on the thumbs up button, and turn on the notification bell so that you don't miss any podcasts done by the Foul Play team. And as you know, Jack61, with his excellent open mic series, make sure you don't miss out on any of those. Jack61, do you have a quick comment, sir?
Yeah, about the notification bell, I just did a slight bit of research about that. Just looking, there are metrics you can look at. Everybody that has a YouTube channel can look at these metrics, and it tells you how people find your podcast. That's what YouTube is telling you, how they got to your podcast. And I noticed under one section, because we're not certainly no giant channel, but we're approaching 3,000 subscribers. But most of the people that come find it through the browse feature, or it just shows up in their feed. They don't get a notification. Anyway, I was reading a subsection about YouTube notifications, and it says that there are times that it doesn't work. They even admit that it does not work properly. So I was really amazed at that. So anyway, there is a glitch. We've known it for years.
Yep.
If you're a subscriber, or if you're not, go ahead and click that thing, subscribe to us. We'd appreciate that. But the main thing is, go to your bell and just click it, and just even if you have it on all, click it again.
Yeah.
Because for some reason, the bulk of the people that come in, they see it in the browse feature, and they don't get it. They're not getting it from the notification. It's so weird. Anyway, so I dropped that.
Correct. And also check your subscriber status. YouTube has also experienced glitches in which you become unsubscribed.
That's right.
So, yeah.
That's right.
So double check, and so guys, we appreciate your support. All right, Jack61, if we can have the next slide, please. This is our standard disclaimer. We'll be putting up official documents. We may also show some short videos. The purpose of all that is really for our commentary and for research and education purposes. Thank you. We have the next slide, please, Jack 61. All right. So really, because of the nature of the material that we're covering, it's very, very important to understand that viewer discretion is strongly advised. A lot of the material that we are covering in today's podcast will definitely be triggering, potentially offensive, and disturbing in nature. So, guys, it is very important that you use your discretion. Now, throughout the podcast series, members of the Foul Play team, we're going to be providing our own personal opinions. These opinions may differ to your own, and that's fine. There's no big deal about that. The important thing to realize is that opinions are not facts. Okay, keep that in mind. And guys, all the provisos that you've seen here, they're going to apply to the entire podcast series. So we're not going to keep on showing them at the start of every podcast. So keep that in mind. So the only thing that we ask is please show your respect in the comments, in chat. You never know, members of the respective families may appear in our chat. So please show your due respect. If you have a question, please place a Q in front of your question, and we'll try and answer your question towards the end of the podcast. Thank you so much. Jack 61, if we can have the next slide, please. All right. So what are we trying to do? What are the aims of this particular series of podcasts? What are the questions that we need to answer? There are basically two types of questions here, guys. First of all, and there's been a lot of debate. You go to social media, on X and other social media platforms, there's been a huge amount of debate on these matters. First of all, did Stephen Avery coerce his 16-year-old nephew, Brendan Dassey, into the rape, torture, shooting, dismemberment, and cremation of the 25-year-old Teresa Horbach on the Avery Salvage Yard on October the 31st, 2005? Or, here's the other fundamental question, did the co-lead investigators, Tom Fassbender and Mark Wiegert, coerce the 16-year-old Brendan Dassey into giving a false narrative confession by utilizing or using the Reed technique on an intellectually challenged child without the presence of an adult guardian, right? Now, in the very first question that we put about did Stephen Avery coerce his nephew, Brendan Dassey, you must remember that the narrative was provided by Brendan Dassey. And it was Brendan Dassey that provided these horrific events that took place both in Stephen Avery's master bedroom and his garage, and in his garage. Remember, according to Brendan, both Stephen and himself had placed the RAV4 in the pit area. So we'll be examining all of those things. But we need to know, first of all, before we can deep dive into this, who is Brendan Dassey? And why is it important to tell his story? Okay, it's very, very important. If you look at the second question about the coercion of a false narrative, false confession, if that is indeed what happened, then quite clearly neither Brendan Dassey nor Stephen Avery were responsible for the murder of Teresa Horbach. So that's why we need to do a deep dive into this particular area and this particular aspect. Jack 61.
Just a brief comment, and just I'll say it and let everybody think about this as we go along. Think about the March 1st interaction with Fassbender and Wiegert. Think about the May 13th interaction with Fassbender and Wiegert. And in both scenarios, it's even actually worse than May, but in both scenarios, Brendan is alone. I don't care if O'Kelly was there. his lawyer couldn't be there, or the questions would have never have went the direction they did, because he would have had to stop it. The same thing on March 1st. He had no one there to protect him against these experienced investigators. So just keep that in mind.
Correct. Thank you so much, Jack 61. And don't worry, we'll cover all of that. And guys, welcome everyone who's joined the podcast, no matter what platform you're on. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Jack 61, if we can have the next slide, please. So we really need to know who Brendan Dassey actually was. Let me go through this. Welcome. This is Brendan Ray Dassey, and this is his story. It's not about Stephen Avery. It's not about Bobby Dassey. It's all about Brendan Dassey. Now, Brendan, he was born on October the 19th, 1989. He's currently 34 years of age. His biological parents are Barbara and Peter Dassey, and he has three brothers, Brian, Bobby, and Blaine. And you've heard their names in many of our podcasts that we've talked about in the past. He also has a half-brother by the name of Brad Dassey. He has three uncles that you've all heard about, Charles, Stephen, and Earl Avery. Now, Brendan Dassey is particularly close with Stephen Avery. Brendan often has helped Stephen in his garage, or working on cars, cleaning up the garage, and also working in the yard as well. Both Stephen and Brendan were relatively close. Brendan Dassey, he was a sophomore at Mishicot High School. This is in 2005. He was in the 10th grade. One thing about Brendan Dassey was that he had relatively poor academic ability. Based on his grades, he was getting C, D's, and F's. So academically, he was not very, very strong. In regards to his IQ, there were many, many tests done over a long period of time, and he was in the borderline deficiency range. Brendan Dassey was enrolled in special education classes as well as several standard classes, so he needed additional help. So his demeanor, for those who knew him. Now, I've never met Brendan Dassey. I've never spoken to Brendan Dassey. These are comments from his own family and from his own friends, and also his school teachers. Brendan has been described as being very, very quiet, introverted, and very, very shy. He has several loves that he enjoys. He loves the WWE, the wrestling. He is a voracious reader. He loves playing video games, especially on his PlayStation 2, and he loves animals. There are certain things that Brendan does not like. Brendan has a distaste and a disgust for the presence of blood. Blood makes him faint or have a blackout. Brendan Dassey also dislikes confrontations. He prefers to be alone. He prefers his own company. The thing about Brendan, which should really be of no surprise, is that Brendan himself has never been in trouble at school. He's had no juvenile or criminal record. Clean. In 2005, Brendan Dassey lived on the Avery salvage yard in the trailer home that you see down below. He lived with his mother and his brothers. Now, what we're going to be focusing on in this podcast is October the 31st. So that was only a little brief introduction to who Brendan Dassey was, all right, and is. But we're going to be focusing on October the 31st, 2005. Now, I realize this is a sensitive area, a sensitive topic, and I'm definitely not an expert on Brendan. Like I said, there are many YouTubers who have put in a phenomenal amount of work. Becca Chu, Tracy Keogh, many others over a long period of time who know Brendan, have spoken to Brendan, and who know his character and personality. He could be your son as well. Okay? A placid young man. So let's have a look at the events of October 31st, 2005. Jack 61, if we can have a look at the next slide. There's no question. These are all facts. Stephen Avery, at about 8:12 a.m. on October the 31st, had phoned the Auto Trader magazine. What he wanted to do was to organize a photo shoot. He wanted to place his sister's, Barb Yunder, minivan inside the Auto Trader magazine to sell. And you can see the documentation that was generated, and the photographer who was going to come out to the Avery salvage yard to take a photograph of Barb Yunder's van was Teresa Horbach. And you can see the picture here. That's Teresa with her Toyota RAV4. So let's set the scene. Let's have a look at what happened. So this is not in dispute. All the paperwork led directly to Stephen Avery. Can we have the next slide, please, Jack 61? There's no question that Teresa Horbach had been out at the Avery salvage yard on multiple occasions. This was not her first photo shoot at the Avery salvage yard. She knew who Stephen Avery was and had encountered him previously. So she knew exactly where she was going. Stephen Avery was not a mysterious person to Teresa Horbach. Jack 61.
If I'm not mistaken, this was her 10th visit.
Yeah, she had appeared on the Avery salvage yard on multiple times. And in actual fact, she actually spoke to her former colleague, Pierce, Tom Pierce, and she reminded Tom who Stephen was, that he was the famous exoneree who was wrongfully convicted. So Teresa Horbach knew precisely where she was going. And as you can see from that sign there, it stood out. She knew precisely where she was going. So Jack 61, if we have a look at the next slide, please. And as Jack 61 eloquently placed and put, Teresa Horbach had been on that property multiple times. And these are all the photographs that Teresa took of vehicles and also a fishing boat trailer on the Avery salvage yard. And all of these were placed in the Auto Trader magazine. If you have a look at some of these images, one of the cars that she photographed was also for Tom Yunder, right? So not only did she take photographs for Stephen, but she also took photographs for Tom Yunder. So if you look at these pictures, you can see that a lot of these photographs were actually close to where Stephen lived. And some of these photographs were also where Barb Yunder lived. So she was familiar with the territory, exactly where she was potentially going. There was not a mystery to her. So she had taken many photographs previously. Jack 61, if we can have a look at the next slide, please. Now, this is important. This is setting the scene, precisely what happened on October the 31st. Now, on October the 31st, 2005, both Brendan Dassey and Blaine, their brothers, they came home from school and they got let off at the bus stop at the end of Avery Road, which I'll show you at approximately 3:45 p.m. These are all established, corroborated facts. On the very same day, as you saw, Stephen Avery had organized for Teresa Horbach to come out to the salvage yard to take a photograph. So she arrived and took a photograph or photographs of Barb Yunder's minivan at approximately about 2:35 p.m. There's always going to be a little bit of wiggle room, plus or minus a couple of minutes. Now, according to Stephen Avery, Teresa Horbach was paid $40 and she had left after about 5 minutes after the photo shoot. So normally she would only take a few minutes at best to take these photographs and then leave. Now, Bobby Dassey saw Teresa Horbach arrive and take photographs of the van. Where the narrative differs is that Bobby Dassey did not see Teresa Horbach leave, this is according to Bobby, when Bobby Dassey went to go bow hunting. You can see from the picture up above precisely where the individuals were, where Barb Yunder's van was. So Bobby Dassey was looking out from the window, his dining room window, as you can see with the arrow. Stephen Avery was in his trailer. And later on, the boys, Brendan and Blaine, came home and were inside the house. All right, so that's setting the narrative of what happened that day. Jack 61, if we can have a look at the next slide, please. Now, there's no doubt that the interaction between Stephen and Teresa took place. According to Stephen, Teresa Horbach had handed him a copy of the Auto Trader magazine. This is the exact same copy of the Auto Trader magazine that was given to Joe Ellen Zipperer, right? So what Teresa Horbach does, she does a photo shoot. She gives the client a copy of the one of the latest Auto Trader magazines to give as an example. This Auto Trader magazine was found exactly where Stephen said he had placed it, on his computer desk. And this was photographed and taken on November the 5th, 2005. And it's the exact same magazine that Teresa gave Joe Ellen Zipperer. Okay, so there's no doubt Teresa was there. The encounter took place. Jack 61, if we can have a look at the next slide, please. This is going to be very, very crucial in our narrative. So when Brendan and Blaine were let off at the school bus, you can see in the yellow circle down below, that's where Brendan and Blaine were let off. The school bus driver stops there, lets the boys off, and they walk down the gravel road to their home, right? And this was a diagram drawn by Brendan Dassey. This is going to be crucial in our upcoming narrative, and this was drawn by Brendan. So Jack 61, if we have a look at the next slide, please. It just so happened that in this particular image, there was a school bus exactly where Lisa Buchner would have dropped the boys off. The purpose of this slide is very simple and straightforward. That is, both Brendan and Blaine Dassey would have walked straight past the mailboxes. You can see on the right-hand side where the family mailboxes were. And as you know, from what we've been talking about in the past, that's where Tom Sawinski would have stopped his car to deliver the newspaper to the Avery family. So on October the 31st, when Blaine and Brendan Dassey were let off the school bus, both boys walked straight past the mailboxes. That's going to be very important in the oncoming narrative. All right, Jack 61. So if we can have a look at the next slide. Well, what happened next was that after October the 31st, Karen Horbach, which is Teresa's mum, on November the 3rd, she phoned up law enforcement to say, hey, look, my daughter hasn't been seen since October the 31st. That's an unusual occurrence. Normally, my daughter Teresa will let us know where she is. So, law enforcement first became known of the disappearance of Teresa Horbach on November the 3rd. There was, and Jack 61 has shown you through the playing of the telephone calls, police telephone calls, there was a massive search effort that was in place in order to find where Teresa Horbach had gone. And not only were law enforcement were involved, there were also private citizens that were extremely concerned for her whereabouts, right? So there was a huge response, both by law enforcement and also by private citizens in order to find Teresa Horbach and her RAV4. It just so happens that a mere 2 days later, on November the 5th, two people, both Pam and Nicole Sturm, who are regarded as citizen searchers, they found Teresa Horbach RAV4 on the Avery salvage yard. Now, what's interesting here is that a flyover on November the 4th that went over the Avery salvage yard and all the surrounding areas failed to spot the RAV4. However, both Pam and Nicole, and Pam, by the way, is second cousin to Teresa Horbach, she found the Toyota RAV4 on the Avery salvage yard. So that's the narrative so far, as we know. So Jack 61, if we can have the next slide, please. Well, in the meantime, a lot of the Avery and Dassey family members, they went to Kratz. That's what they normally do, right? Every now and then, the whole family or most of the family members go to Kratz. They've got shacks, I think, houses up at Kratz where they go fishing, hunting, and other bits and pieces. And this is a very interesting photograph. It shows Brendan Dassey, 16 years old. He was 16 years old at the time, with his uncle, Stephen Avery, and Brendan Dassey's grandparents in the background. Now, it just so happened that at the same time that Teresa Horbach had gone missing, Stephen Avery was in the middle of a $36 million civil suit. This particular civil suit was against the ex-sheriff, Tom Kocerek, from the MTSO, and the district attorney, Dennis Vogel. What is interesting is that Tom Kocerek was due to make an appearance at his deposition on November the 10th. Now, as soon as the Toyota RAV4 was found, search warrants were issued on the Avery salvage yard to search the Avery salvage yard, but also to search the surrounding buildings as well. All right, so Jack 61, if we can have a look at the next slide, please. Now, if you have a look at this slide, look who's on the television. It's Teresa Horbach. So quite clearly, the family members were not permitted to come back onto the Avery salvage yard. Now, I know that Kayla and also Barb were allowed back on, supervised, in order to feed the dogs, right? But Stephen Avery was not permitted to come back on. The other family members were not permitted to come back on. I know that Bobby Dassey picked up his black Labrador, but that was it. So it's pretty obvious that the Avery family, the members that were there at Kratz, they were watching and hearing what was unfolding on their property, right? No one was telling them what was happening. They were getting a lot of their information from the broadcasts, right? And as you can see, this iconic photograph, there's Brendan, there's Stephen and other family members watching on TV what's unfolding on their own property, right? And remember, a lot of law enforcement officers surrounded where Stephen was at Kratz. He was not really allowed to leave that premises. So the important point here is that Brendan, Stephen, and other family members were hearing and seeing what was transpiring on their property. All right, Jack 61. We have the next slide, please. All right. So you know what unfolded, what ultimately unfolded. So let's have a look at what happened to Stephen first. Stephen, he was arrested on November the 9th, 2005 on a weapons charge. His trial was on February the 12th, 2007, and Stephen Avery was sentenced on March 18th, 2007. Now, there's no question about it. You can't deny it. There's a lot of damning forensic evidence that points to Stephen Avery, right? A lot of that forensic evidence has been disputed, of course, but there is forensic evidence that suggests the potential involvement of Stephen Avery in what happened to Teresa Horbach. He was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Now, Stephen believes, and he still maintains, that he was framed for the murder of Teresa Horbach. He's always maintained his innocence. He's never said, okay, look, I did it, I'm sorry. No, he's always maintained his innocence. And of course, Stephen Avery is represented by Kathleen Zellner. Let's turn now to the person that we're going to be discussing a lot in our podcast That's Brendan. Brendan was arrested on March the 1st, 2006. This occurred directly after his interrogation by Fassbender and Uyghur. His trial was April the 16th, 2007, and he was tried as an adult, not as a child. Brendan Dassey, he was sentenced on April the 25th, 2007, but Brendan did not testify in Stephen's trial. Brendan actually pleaded not guilty, and he actually recanted his confession on the stand and previously. What is interesting about Brendan is that he actually provided a narrative to what had occurred to Teresa Halbach. Brendan implicated his own uncle, Stephen Avery, and himself in the rape and murder of Teresa Halbach. As a result of what Brendan said, Mr. Kratz gave the March 2nd press conference, okay, which was very, very damning, and we'll talk about that. Brendan Dassey is currently represented by both Laura Nyrider and Stephen Drizzen, and they're very, very important individuals. They're involved in the Center on Wrongful Convictions. Now, both Laura and Stephen, they both believe that Brendan Dassey himself was coerced into a false confession. Brendan Dassey has been sentenced to life in prison for his role or alleged roles in the murder of Teresa Halbach. He is potentially due for parole in 2048. Brendan will be 59 years old. Currently, Brendan Dassey, to this day, has spent 17 years, 8 months, and 9 days in a prison cell. Now, what is interesting about Brendan Dassey is that his confession produced 2 crucial pieces of forensic evidence that were used predominantly against Stephen, his uncle, and that is item FL, the bullet fragment that contains Teresa Halbach's DNA, and also the hood latch touch DNA that was also used against Stephen Avery. That's very, very interesting. So, guys, in a nutshell, that summarizes the scenario of what occurred from October the 31st, the disappearance of Teresa, to the eventual sentencing of both Stephen and Brendan Dassey. Guys, do we have any questions?
Well, we've had a number of questions. I've just been highlighting, Doc, that we can get to.
Yep. We'll probably do them towards the end.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much for joining our podcast. So, Jack 61, if we have a look at the next slide. So what the Foul Play team have done in the past, we've actually read all the trial readings from Stephen's trial and also from Brendan Dassey's trials. We've read them all the days. We've also done the bail and initial hearings of Brendan Dassey as well. So they're all available on our YouTube channel as a playlist. So if you've got a couple of days, literally, come and listen to it. A lot of people put in a lot of time, energy, and effort, but you can hear the trial testimonies as they transpired. Guys, do we have any comments so far?
Well, I think that, for me personally, I'm sure because I have children Brendan's age, his saga, it's a little closer to home. I don't know Brendan. I've never spoke to Brendan, but I've got children his age, and I get it. Being in a place where others have complete control, and they did. Don't anyone ever make the mistake to think they didn't over this kid. That and I know Doc and they're going to get more into it. the suggestibility aspect of Brendan's personality. He was so suggestible. He wanted to help. He wanted to help adults. That's just his nature. It's not that he
Yes.
was trained that way. That's just who he was as a kid. All the kids are
Yes.
like that.
Yes.
Introverted,
Yeah.
but his, this for me personally, because I guess I've read it so many times. And again, I don't try to take everything that I read and just make that the singular story. I understand life goes on, but I think about going from, let's just say November 3rd, when the wheels start really turning, until Brendan's ultimately arrest on March 1st. And all this time passage, that seems to be, it's a forgotten aspect. This is 4 months later. And what all has Brendan been exposed to? And I don't mean anything against anyone out there. I'm just saying Stephen's been arrested for this. The cops know and I'll have to pull up the date, but I think it was the 4th, 3rd or the 4th at the latest. They knew that Brendan was over there. They knew it. But
Yes.
yet Kratz didn't do anything, or any other prosecutor, to go after Brendan being involved.
Yes.
And the big question is why that didn't that for me, one of the big questions is why not? What
Yeah.
were you waiting on? And this
Yeah.
story that eventually emerges, that's a whole nother thing, but
Yeah.
I'll let others talk.
I'm going to take a bit of a break. I'm going to come back in a couple of minutes. Do you think it might be worthwhile answering some of the questions that we've got already?
Sure.
Yep. I'll come back in a few minutes and we'll take it from there. Okay. I won't be too long. Thank you.
You got it. Anybody got anything else before we get into the questions here?
Well,
We've only got a few, but go ahead.
I wanted to say, I'm sorry. What you were saying, that suggestibility of Brendan due to his age, IQ, and just his makeup, the way he was, that is a factor. First of all, he was there alone, the way that he was, and then we have the abominable, I can't pronounce that word, the read technique, right? The interrogation and the interview method, I think it should be abolished. At least it should be modified and adjusted to people like Brendan, because you cannot treat, not everybody's created equally, right?
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So there are all these there's like 9 or 10, I think, steps for the read technique, which includes the positive confrontation, the theme development, how do you handle those denials of the suspects or alleged suspects, how do you overcome objections, how do you maintain, and how do you get the attention from the subject, and if they're like passive like Brendan was, they also know, they've been trained how to handle that. And also, how do you shift focus where you want them to go? Because
That's right.
right?
Yep.
The interviewers have an idea of what might have happened. Most likely they don't know the whole story. Sometimes they do, but in this case they didn't know. They thought it was Stephen, that tunnel vision that we've been pounding for the last 5-6 years, right? So they're trained how to do the
That's right.
alternative
We lost Neverly. She just dropped.
scenario, and how to guide them to go there. And we have seen this in Brendan's trial. We've seen him in many others, but this is specific for Brendan because he wasn't an adult. His IQ was way below the average. He was a child, basically, without a supervision. So tell me, how could you treat everybody equally? In my book, you can't. But what do I know? They didn't ask me for my opinion.
Well, it's like a doctor, you know. They can't just treat, even if you're a general practitioner, you can't treat. I mean, personality-wise, I guess you can, but as far as symptoms, you cannot. They can't just approach every person the same. It has to be a different. And for me, an investigator has to be kind of along the lines of a doctor, surgeon, and sometimes gets even more specialized. But you know, the ultimate goal, and for those that I'm sure everyone here knows it. Well, I say I'm sure. The purpose of the read technique is to get a statement. They, you know, I guess if the truth shakes out in that whole scenario, that's great. But their ultimate goal of the read technique is to get a statement, and they use this. Police use this, but very often in situations where they have nothing, which they didn't here.
Yeah.
They had nothing at all on Brendan, nothing, and
To
still don't.
me, yeah. To me, these two officers, interviewers, which was Wiegert and Fassbender, they were like snake-oil salesmen, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And with this read technique, they have tricky way of asking questions. And we also know that tool, Michael O'Kelly, he was the worst at using this. The strategic questioning. I mean, they've been trained in all of this. So it's kind of a second nature to them. So they will ask a question like, was this your idea? Or did Steven talk you into it?
Or they'll say, "We already know. We just need you to tell us."
Yeah.
In your words. So we already know. So they're,
yeah.
you know, that sets a different perspective, especially for a child. You know,
Yeah,
a seasoned adult is gonna like, you don't know shit.
Yeah.
Okay. But
Or
for Brendan, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. Or they're gonna ask him, did you plan this out? Or did it just happen? Right? So either
Right.
way, they're treating him like he has done this. It was him, nobody else but him. Right? So did you plan this or did it happen? Right?
Exactly.
And that's exactly what Michael O'Kelly asked him. Remember that letter where he said, yes, I feel bad about this, or no, I don't feel bad about what I've done.
Oh,
But we'll
are you
talk about
sorry?
that later. Are you sorry that you did it? Yeah.
Or are you not sorry?
Or you're not
Go ahead.
sorry. But either way, the main point is you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
trickery.
yeah. So really, the whole idea of all the stuff that we're doing now is to show you the road and the path of what led to that, and that's crucial.
Yeah.
That's crucial. All right, guys, shall we continue?
Absolutely. I didn't get to the questions actually. Mary and I were too busy flapping our gums, but that's okay. We can do the questions later. It's fine.
We do it after. So if we can have a look at the next slide, Jack 61. Again, the focus of our podcast on Brendan. So what actually happened? Let's focus on Brendan. As you know, when he was charged, Brendan Dassey was 17 years old. He's still a very, very young man, hasn't even lived life. Now, Brendan Dassey was sentenced to life in prison. And these were the charges, what he was convicted on. First-degree murder, second-degree sexual assault, and mutilation of a corpse. But there's a huge lingering problem when it comes to Brendan Dassey. This is something that a lot of people do not want to talk about. It's very interesting, right, Jack 61, about some of the comments that we're seeing on X at the moment involving Mr. Kratz, right? Especially when it comes to Brendan Dassey. One of the major problems in this case is that Brendan Dassey himself has not been forensically linked to the murder of Teresa Hobart, nor to her Toyota RAV4. There's absolutely no forensic evidence. This is going to become crucial in our upcoming discussions. Now, Brendan Dassey himself was convicted not on forensic evidence, but on his March 1st, 2006 so-called confessions. We want to know, how on earth did this happen? How did this occur? So Jack 61, if we can have a look at the next slide. So here is the big issue. And this actually was a very hard sell for the state, but they achieved it. They got away with it. If you have a look at Brendan Dassey, there's absolutely no forensic evidence that can place Brendan Dassey inside Stephen Avery's trailer. There is no forensic evidence that can place Brendan Dassey inside Teresa's Toyota RAV4. What's even more frustrating is that there's no forensic evidence that can actually place the victim, Teresa Horbach, inside Stephen Avery's trailer. And apart from Ida Meffel, which can easily be debunked, you can't even place Teresa Horbach inside Stephen Avery's garage. The issue is this: there is a total lack, let me repeat it, a total lack of supporting physical and forensic evidence tying Brendan Dassey to any crime involving Teresa Horbach. None whatsoever. There's no corroboration at all. Nothing to corroborate Brendan Dassey's narrative and recollections. However, for the state, this didn't seem to be a problem for them. And that's what this podcast series is all about. How on earth did the state and the prosecutors, how did they get away with this? How were they able to convince a jury? Right? Very interesting. So Jack 61, if we can have a look at the next slide. Something that you're going to hear a lot about all the time is the following quote. I'll read it out. In fact, Neville, do you see the quote?
Yes, I do.
Would you like to read it out, please?
Of course. Absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. Looking
Right.
for extraterrestrial life, right?
Yep, correct. So you must burn this in your brain, because this is a common theme that you're going to hear all the time. Now, when Carl Sagan came up with this particular quote, he used it because back then, a long time ago, they were sending out space probes in order to send a message from Earth, hey, look, we're here, to potential life forms out in outer space. And his argument was, look, let's spend the money doing these space probes, even though we can't actually prove that extraterrestrial life exists. And the reason why is because they're too far away. There is no way that Carl Sagan meant to use this quote for a murder trial, a murder investigation, right? So it's being cleverly used by programs such as Convicting a Murderer. But this mantra is going to be repeated time and time again by, guess who? Investigator Tom Fassbender, investigator Mark Wiggett, and also by attorney Tom Fallon during Brendan Dassey's trial. They didn't seem to care that there's actually no evidence suggesting that Brendan Dassey had any involvement in the murder of Teresa Horbach. They didn't seem to care. Guys, do we have any comments? Cherie, Neville, Jack 61, any comments?
Well, I don't think they did care, especially going into March 1st. That's my opinion. They had a plan because they'd already talked about, we can't forget, Brendan had already been quadrupled multiple times, starting on November 6th by O'Neill and Baldwin, and then moving forward multiple times in late February by Fassbender and Wiegert. So they already had my opinion only, they had a plan going into March 1st. There was no other reason for them to bring him in there except to drag him into it. That's exactly what they did.
Correct.
So
Correct.
They were there to get a statement and felt like they could do it, and that's exactly what they done. We know everything, Brendan. Just be honest now.
Correct. 100% correct. But this is where matters become even more insane, right? So remember that mantra. Absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. have a look at what the state are currently doing. So Jack 61, if we can have a look at the next slide. Cherie, do you see that slide?
Yes, I do.
Would you like to read out on the right-hand side, starting from the top? This is the state's response to Kathleen Zellner. This was written by Joshua Call and Lisa Kumpfer in regards to Bobby Dassey. Let's go for it.
Oh, the overwhelming evidence that Bobby did not commit this crime exists in the utter absence of any facts tying him to the actual killing or even to a single piece of the forensic evidence. Jurors are instructed to use their common sense when reaching a verdict. That the arguments of the attorneys are not evidence and that a trial is a search for truth. The fact that Brendan both confessed and implicated Avery is part of the record, and Brendan was convicted of this crime regardless of the fact that he wasn't, quote unquote, forensically linked to it.
All right. So Jack 61 and everyone.
He's got a real problem there, doesn't he? There's not one piece of evidence that ties Brendan to this case either. Not one. Not even nothing. And he admits he was there.
Then
Yeah.
that's okay. Yeah, for Bobby, but it's not okay for Brendan.
Yeah,
that's right.
So work that one out.
Yep. So here is the irony, right? The state are using the same argument to say Bobby Dassey. And remember, this is not about Bobby. Bobby Dassey is not involved in this crime. Why? Because there's no forensic evidence linking him to the crime. On the same token, they use the same argument to say, well, Brendan did confess, although there's nothing that forensically links him to the crime. So it's a double-edged sword. They're using you're correct, Jack 61. They're using a double standard. They're using the same argument to keep one person, the focus of that person, Bobby, and the same argument to say, well, Brendan Dassey is guilty. Why is he guilty? Well, he confessed, right? Not taking into any account that someone in Brendan Dassey's demeanor, education, and his IQ can potentially be coerced into a false confession. That argument never crosses their lips. But the irony doesn't escape us, right, Jack 61, on how the state, we're talking about the Attorney General himself, can have an argument whereby, yes, this person is guilty, even though they're not forensically linked. This person can't be guilty. What are you talking about? They're not forensically linked, Jack 61.
They used, Brendan's, let's just say, personality shortcomings totally against him. So did the prosecution, and going up to, Tom Fallon, an assistant attorney general. They used all that against this kid to get their story sold to the jury. That's exactly what they did.
Yep, 100%. So let's move forward, guys. So in this podcast, what we're going to be doing is time traveling to different events. We're going to go back and forward to various testimonies, various trial testimonies, to bring you the narrative of Brendan Dassey. Now, when Brendan went to trial, this is exactly what his trial attorney put forward, right? Attorney Fremgen said, in the opening statement, this very, very powerful statement to the judge and the jury. Neverly, would you like to read this out? Can you see the slide?
Sure.
So this is what Attorney Fremgen said in his opening statement. Let's go for it.
But I don't believe you'll hear evidence about Brendan Dassey's DNA. You won't hear the same evidence involving Brendan Dassey. There won't be any DNA, no blood, no saliva, no sweat, no hair, nothing. No fingerprints. No science that's going to point to you to Brendan Dassey. Not the science that points to Stephen Avery. But again, this is Brendan Dassey's trial, not Stephen's trial. It's about a 16-year-old boy at the time. It's about 16-year-old high school student with below average cognitive abilities, a 4th grade reading level, a low IQ. It's about a shy, introvert, socially inept, suggestible child. That's what this trial is about.
So you can see that Mark Fremgen, eloquently put it. Because, guys, we don't even have a trial here. There's no forensic evidence at all leading my client to the murder of Teresa Halbach, and he spelt it out quite clearly, right? Beautifully, eloquently. Now, Mr. Kratz knew this. Mr. Kratz was fully aware that the state had nothing on Brendan Dassey. Have a look how Kratz wrapped all this up to try and counteract the fact that they had nothing at all on Brendan. Jack 61, do you see the slide?
I do.
Would you like to read it out? This is Kratz in his opening statement. Let's go for it.
Okay. The evidence in this case, members of the jury, isn't just going to be based on the statements of a young man, aren't just going to be the fanciful expressions or imaginations of somebody. We're going to be able to prove to you in this case that things that the public didn't know, things the police didn't know, were provided by a young man who was at the scene. Was he there? Absolutely. Did he help? Absolutely. And so the jury's role then will be to decide the facts. Your role as a jury will be to decide whether Brendan's admissions of involvement in this case, knowing things that nobody else knows, that only the murderer and the murderer's accomplice could know in this case. And you are to search for the truth.
Notice what Kratz said right in his opening set. He goes, this isn't just going to be based on the statements of a young man, aren't just going to be the fanciful expressions and imagination. At last, King Kratz got it right, because that's exactly what Brendan's statements were.
That's right.
Fanciful expressions and imagination. Jack 61, would you agree?
Oh, absolutely, because Kratz knew they had nothing but a story. That's all they had. And
correct.
Unfortunately, they took, to me, I don't know if I'd call it a crime, but it almost is, taking his statement on March 1st, immediately applying for search warrants, going back into the property to find the bullet, and then eventually the hood latch DNA.
Yes.
Because before that, those two pieces of evidence were not part of the case.
Yep. But notice how clever Kratz is. He goes, was he there? Absolutely. Did Brendan Dassey say he was there? Yes.
He did.
He did. Did he help? Absolutely. Did Brendan Dassey say that he helped his uncle? Yes. Yeah, he was there and he helped. The only person that was missing was Teresa Halbach.
That's right.
So it's interesting how Kratz packaged this. He goes, no. We'll prove that he was there, and we proved that he actually helped. Now, what Kratz did next was really, really clever, because Kratz knew that he had a hard story to sell. Have a look what Kratz actually said. Neverly, do you see the slide? So
I do.
What Kratz has to do is now associate the crime with Brendan. Have a look what Kratz said in his opening statement. Let's go for it, Neverly.
You're going to hear that at 11:43 that morning, so sometime just before noon, Teresa Halbach made that call that's recorded to Brendan Dassey and Barb Yanda's answering machine, saying, I can come out. I'll be out there sometime after 2 today. You're going to hear about the 2 stops she made before Stephen Avery's and Brendan Dassey's residence. That is at the Stephen Schmidt's residence about 1:30, and sometime
Yeah, it stops
Yeah,
there.
okay.
Tell me, what has Kratz done that's real clever? Did anyone pick it up?
What did you say? I'm sorry.
What has Kratz done that's really clever? Did anybody pick it up? Anybody in the chat?
Made co-ownership of the answering machine, Brendan and Bob.
Yeah,
You got it.
exactly. He put them together.
He put them together. So now, all of a sudden, he's now tied Brendan to the answering machine. Brendan's a 16-year-old kid who was at school. What's Brendan Dassey got to do with receiving a call from Teresa Hallbach, right?
Nothing.
Nothing. But he's now co-associated Brendan with Teresa's call. Furthermore, now it's Brendan Dassey's residence, not Barb Yunder's. He has now very cleverly associated Brendan with Teresa and the visit of Teresa. Can you see it? Do you guys agree?
Say that again, Doc.
Do you now agree that what Kratz has done very cleverly is associated Brendan Dassey with the visit of Teresa?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's tied them together. He absolutely did.
Together, right? And when I reread this, I thought, oh my God. So he's doing guilt by association, right? Notice he's mentioned Stephen and Brendan with Teresa Hallbach. Very, very ingenious and clever. Neverly, do you have a comment?
No, I don't. I'm so sorry. I'll mute.
Okay. So interesting how Kratz worked, because remember, guys, they had a deck of cards that was worthless. So how were they going to convince a judge and a jury of Brendan's involvement, Brendan's guilt? Let's have a look at the next slide. Now, what you need to do here, guys, and in chat, is to place yourself in Brendan Dassey's shoes. Put yourself in his shoes, right? You're a shy, introverted kid. You like your own company. You like playing video games. You have a low IQ. You're socially inept. You're 16 years old. Look at who Brendan Dassey encountered and had to deal with, right? He had to deal with both investigators Wiegert and Fassbender, who used the Reed technique on Brendan. Make no mistake about it. And the Reed technique are psychologically based interrogations, right? Just put yourself in Brendan's shoes. A 16-year-old kid who's interrogated non-stop by Fassbender and Wiegert. But guys, that wasn't the start, right, Jack 61? The start occurred on November the 6th. A lot of people forget this. Brendan's actual downfall started one day after the RAV4 was found, and I'll prove it to you. He was also interrogated using the Reed technique by O'Neill and Baldwin, right? So Brendan underwent all those interrogations. Trust me, people much smarter than Brendan have fallen foul of the Reed technique, right? Individuals much older, much smarter, university degrees, it doesn't matter. The Reed technique is a psychological interrogation technique, right? You think, nah, no worries, I'm innocent. There's no way these guys are going to convince me. The scary thing is, statistics show that there are tens of thousands of Americans sitting in prison, some for life, who are totally innocent. Guys, would you agree? That's what the statistics show. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Thousands of innocent people are in jail right now.
Thousands.
And that's not really even including plea deals for people that have no resources and can't afford a real lawyer. They're just correct. Okay, I'll just take the plea, but even though I didn't do anything, you got me.
Do you want life or do you want 10 years? Right? Even though you've done nothing. Right?
Exactly.
Yep. So not only did Brendan have to deal with all those investigators and law enforcement officers, he had to deal with Kaczynski and O'Kelly. Now, remember, Kaczynski is meant to be the attorney representing Brendan. Kaczynski is meant to be helping Brendan. The problem with Kaczynski, as we all know, is that both Kaczynski and O'Kelly actually believed in Brendan Dassey's guilt. Both Kaczynski and O'Kelly were secretly working for the state. Right, guys? They were working with Kratz.
Yes, and Fassbender and Wiegert, and their goal was to provide information, whatever they could get out of Brendan, and feed it to the investigators and the prosecutors to go after Stephen. Brendan was a pawn. Brendan was a tool.
Correct. So how would you feel?
The planted evidence, right there.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. So how would you feel when your own attorneys and investigator are not working in your interest, but actually working behind the scenes with the state prosecutors, right? Then during the trial, Brendan Dassey had to deal with Kratz, to a lesser extent, Norm Garn. He had to deal with Tom Fallon. And Tom Fallon is the sharpest of the lot of them. Would you agree, Jack 61, Cherie, Neville? He is much, much more potent and smarter than all of them, than all of the attorneys. Would you agree?
Absolutely. The guy is,
as
much as I dislike him, he's extremely intelligent on Wisconsin law, and ways to get around the relevant statutes and so forth.
Oh yeah. He'll prove there weren't 10 commandments, there were 7. That's how good Tom Fallon is.
That's right.
His ability to critique and to find examples of other cases to say, oh, this is not relevant, Judge, because remember this case, paragraph 12, line 4, blah, 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 Walters versus Smith. He knows it all. He knows the case law superbly. He was the trial prosecutor against Brendan. And then later on, the greatest tragedy, in my opinion, was that Brendan and his attorneys had to deal with the Attorney General at the time, Brad Schimmel. I'll tell you right now, see if you agree with me, guys, and also in chat, I'd like to get your comments. Brendan is sitting in prison today because of Brad Schimmel. Because
Absolutely.
of Brad Schimmel. Yep. Because remember
that,
yep.
Dr. Silkman, I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, not at all.
That decision of Brad Schimmel speaking out there, doing the press conference, and power to overturn the judge's decision, that was just shocking. Absolutely shocking.
Yeah, Jack. Yes, Neville, I agree. Jack 61.
You take things all in all, and a lot of research has been done in this. I'm not just saying this to blather off some statistics, but if you look at and I'll continue to harp about the decisions of how the process works, with Duffin saying, you know what, you got to free Brendan or retry him within 90 days. It's done. It's over. Throwing out his confession, the so-called confession. I went through your stuff, and he was clearly coerced. Then, the appeal happened and went to the 7th Circuit. 3-panel judge, which is used, I won't say daily, but they use it extensively because they have so many cases to get through. I mean, there's up to 12 or whatever the number is of judges in this in the 7th Circuit. So they split up into groups. He was once again exonerated.
Yes.
Get him out.
Yes.
And then they have the backdoor maneuver of the en banc. And again, I don't care which side wins. You either believe the 3-panel judge system or you do away with it. Because if it was that important to begin with, you should have had the full hearing to start. That's my opinion.
Correct. Correct. And when you've got an attorney general, guys, that comes out and tells a senior judge that he was wrong on the facts and wrong on the law, guys, all bets are off. When you
Well,
don't trust, yep,
yeah, well, not only that, statistically, I just dare anyone to go look up how many times en bancs are granted over the last 15 years, and you'll find there are some years they didn't grant any, but the
yep,
percentage is like 0.2%. It's
very
a
low.
very low number.
Yep.
So how was Schimmel able to get this?
Yep, correct. Because he knew which levers to pull. The amount of power that Brad Schimmel had was phenomenal. Brendan Dassey is sitting in prison today because of that gentleman there, Brad Schimmel, right? His insistence that Brendan was never to be released, that Brendan was regarded, remember what Brad Schimmel said? As a danger to society. As a danger to society. He's never to be released. That's how far. And remember, when the en banc, when Brendan Dassey won 2-1, Brad Schimmel went on TV and said, I want to wish my condolences to the Halbach family.
Yep.
Have you ever in your life ever seen an attorney general go on television and give condolences to the Halbach family because a decision went against what you believed in?
Yes,
Never.
he weaponized the victim's
Yes,
family, basically.
Excellent word. Excellent
Yeah,
word.
he
weaponized
totally
them.
weaponized, and he was talking about, oh, but the Hallbachs are not going to be enjoying the
Their
Thanksgiving, I
holidays.
guess. Yeah, the
Yes.
holidays. Yeah. But what is the point then? Okay, we have learned that the en banc to be able to be drawn, basically, or picked to even have a possibility to have the judges look at your case, it's like 1%, right?
It's
And
very
you
low.
win.
Low.
Yeah, and you win. What is the point of that winning when you have Brad Schimmel
Correct.
so easily trump it all?
To override it.
Yeah.
To override it. Yep.
I mean,
100%.
Before we
we're talking
before
about
before
doom and gloom.
Just
before we
Rhonda.
Yeah, I was gonna say, before we get too far, I got on my horse, but I wanted to say hello to just Rhonda. Hi.
Just Rhonda.
Hey, my homie's here. Welcome.
Hello. Sorry.
Nice to see you here.
Summer soccer games and stuff. It's just better late than never, I hope.
That's true. That's true.
Always welcome.
Welcome. Jack 61, do you have any other comments?
Well, I could talk about this aspect for hours, but I won't. We'll save that for later, Doc.
Okay. All right. So I show you this side just to encapsulate what Brendan Dassey had to deal with, right? And how politically motivated and charged Brendan Dassey's case has become, right? The political ramifications, right, Jack 61? The political ramifications on and also the careers of everyone shown on that picture is at stake. Would you agree?
Yeah, I do want to add one thing just for context. Keep in mind that when, of course, Brendan's first lawyer was Ray. I can't pronounce his last name. Starts with an S.
Cegelski.
Cegelski. Thank you.
Yeah.
And he was his lawyer for roughly a week until suddenly he finds out he's distant. Yeah, he's a cousin or distant cousin or relation to the Halbachs.
Yep.
But my point in stopping us here just for briefly, once Kaczynski got this case, basically for the next 30 days, he gave 28 interviews of some top media interviews. And then I can't remember the exact date, but it was towards the 1st of April 2006 that he hired Michael O'Kelly. Somehow he got his name. So I just wanted to add that for context of the actions of his own lawyer. Even before he talked to Brendan, he's making statements to the media. It's just unreal.
That's correct. 100% correct.
He was chasing that camera and all the attention that he could get. It's unbelievable.
And we'll talk about it later in the podcast that we're doing. There's no question. Kaczynski already came with the notion that Brendan was guilty. Right?
Yes.
Already. So he hadn't even spoken to Brendan, his own client. He's already making derogatory statements against Stephen Avery and accepting the fact that Brendan was guilty, right? And the whole roller coaster of what happened between Kaczynski, O'Kelly, and also Brendan was all because Kaczynski thought his own client was guilty, right? Now, Ken Kratz wrote a couple of very interesting things in his book. So let's have a look at the next slide, Jack 61. This is what Kratz actually said in his own book regarding Brendan Dassey. Just Rhonda, do you see that slide? Do you see the slide?
Yes, I do.
Yep. Would you like to read it, please? So this is Kratz in his own book.
You bet. Then there's Brendan Dassey. I have reviewed Dassey's police interrogation tapes very carefully. He admits he assaulted Teresa and was there when she was murdered as well. Now, the defense argues Dassey was too young to give a statement alone and is mentally impaired. In fact, Dassey's IQ falls within a normal range, and his mom knew he was speaking to police and chose not to sit in. What matters here is only one thing, the same thing I reminded my jurors of all those years ago as a prosecutor: the truth. Before Brendan's confession, I had no reason to believe that anyone other than Stephen Avery had been involved in Teresa's murder, certainly not any of the minor children on the compound. I never made Brendan Dassey as a killer or even an accomplice. I never even ordered the collection of his DNA as I had for the other adult members of the Avery clan. Did I underestimate him or simply look right past him, as I assume has happened most of his life?
Now, think about this. Did Kratz just admit that the state had nothing on Brendan Dassey?
He did. He absolutely did.
He did. He admitted that the state had nothing on Brendan, right? Because look what he said, or simply look right past him. In other words, here's the tragedy. Had Brendan kept his mouth shut, had Brendan had the nous and mental acuity to say, I reserve my right to silence, and walked out on November the 6th, and we'll talk about it. We're going to read what happened to him on November the 6th. Would you agree that Brendan Dassey would still be home with his mum, his dad, and his brothers? Would you agree?
I think the chances are good, but I kind of reserve that a little bit because I know how desperate they were to make these ties between Teresa being there and being inside that property somewhere. They needed some connection. And look, I'm not accusing them having a meeting in the background saying, "Hey, we got a problem here because we can't prove she was ever inside that property." I'm not saying that, but I'm not saying it didn't happen either. I'm just saying I'm throwing it out there because at this point, by the time February rolls around, they didn't. Their case was relatively. I mean, you taking into account the lawsuit, the depositions that happened, you take all that into account, and I don't care if the case was settled, middle of February. That does matter, but it doesn't matter to the degree of the public knew that there had been some problems that happened in that police department, that
Yes.
lab, everything that happened in 1985.
Yes.
That had to cross their mind as the prosecution team. That's all I got.
Yep. But you have to admit, had Brendan exercised his rights, his legal rights to silence?
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I have to agree with you, Doc.
How were the investigators going to point to Brendan having an involvement in Teresa's death when there is nothing tying Brendan to Teresa or the RAV4, and Stephen never has always maintained his innocence? Would you agree they couldn't have possibly charged Brendan because they had nothing but his words against him. So had Brendan had competency, mental acuity, and his mum or an attorney with him, he'll be home. Would you agree?
Yeah, maybe Peter just said, "Hey, look, I went over and helped,
Yep.
clean up the yard. We did some work in the garage, and that's it. I went home. That's all I
Yep.
got to say. Goodbye."
That's exactly right. If Stephen had committed this murder, it wasn't when I was there.
Yeah,
Agree?
done. Agree. Yep.
But the state chose to prosecute Brendan. And I'm going to show you exactly how it transpired. So if we have a look at the next slide, guys, this really is the sequence of events that led to Brendan being arrested. Now, put yourself in his shoes. He's a 16-year-old child, right? It all started on November the 6th. I'm going to go through this. This is very important. This is the road map to how Brendan got arrested. So both O'Neill and Baldwin had gone to Kratz, and they spoke with Brendan Dassey on November the 6th, both him and Brian at Kratz. On November the 10th, Skolinski also interrogated Brendan Dassey, right? After that, Fassbender and Wiegert became involved. But prior to them talking to Brendan Dassey, a very important event took place, right, guys? And that is Wiegert and Baldwin spoke with Kayla Avery on February the 20th, 2006. Talking to Kayla was the turning point for Brendan Dassey. Now, Mark Wiegert on the stand admitted after speaking with Kayla, they needed to speak with Brendan again. So both Fassbender and Wiegert interrogated Brendan twice, actually 3 times, on February the 27th, once at Mishicot High School, once at Two Rivers Police Department, and that evening they took Brendan and Barb to Fox Hills, the Fox Hills Resort. Correct me if I'm wrong, but none of that interrogation has been documented. Is that correct, Jack 61?
That's right. Not one word has ever been truly documented in a report. And
Yep.
Brian eventually joined him. I think he was at work, but he eventually joined him there as well.
Yep. So the question is this: what did they tell Brendan? What did they discuss with him? And the reason, if you could remember, why they took Brendan and Barb to Fox Hills and not to go home was what? What was the reason given?
For their safety. For their safety.
Yeah, for their freaking safety. And then they turned them loose after that.
One day. So the only concern for their safety for one day. They asked Brendan, what did you do on February the 28th? I went to school, right? And so the argument, I'll get you on the sec, Jesse, but the argument was, well, we're law enforcement. We protect people. We needed to protect Brendan because you never know, maybe someone will try and harm him from his family or try and talk him out of it. So we had to protect him. And yet one day they release him and he goes back to school at Jack 61.
See, for me, Doc and everyone, that argument fails miserably because, number one, how would anyone know what was going on with Brendan and Barb and eventually Brian at all, unless someone in law enforcement told them what was going on? How would? And number two, anybody on the Avery salvage yard is going to harm Brendan for what reason? To protect what? To protect who? That argument is just it doesn't compute for me. I'm sorry, it just doesn't.
No, it does not, Jack. You're right. Because all they did is, they isolated Brendan. That was the purpose, in my opinion, away from his family, so they can manipulate him easier than to let him back.
I think it was also a power move to show that, Brendan and Barb, and basically, I think Barb as a, hey, just call it what it is, a scare tactic. We're
Yes,
basically
it
going to,
is.
Intimidation.
exactly. Thank
And
you.
also a subliminal message that they're bad and you're not. We want to,
Correct.
So they're already thinking that Stephen, he's most likely guilty. It's as I said, subliminal message.
Yeah, correct.
But we
So
want to take care of you. Yeah.
they've got Brendan in an extremely vulnerable spot, and don't worry, we're going to go through all of this. Very important. They've got him in a very vulnerable spot. They want to keep him there. They want to keep him on the boil. They don't want to let off the pressure valve by sending him home, because he would have spoken to his brothers, he would have spoken to other family members, and they would have said, Brendan, what are you doing? Don't say anything. Keep quiet. So they got Brendan to the position that they wanted him at. And after February the 27th, they interviewed Brendan, interrogated Brendan twice, once at school and then once in the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. After that interview on March the 1st, Brendan Dassey was arrested. He was arrested. Now, after that, believe it or not, he was interrogated one more time on May the 13th in the Sheboygan County Sheriff's Department. Why? Because Kratz wanted a clean confession. Jack 61.
Yeah, I think it's important, and I don't know if we'll go through it as time moves on, but just as a quick summary to this May 13th ordeal, everyone has to keep in mind what happened on May the 12th. And this was a planned event. Make no mistake, Kaczynski and O'Kelly planned this event. Now, I can't prove it, but I suspect this may have been mentioned to Fassbender and Uyghur. We're going to have this little session, O'Kelly is, with Brendan. And, maybe we can work something out. I can't prove that.
Yep.
I'm just reading between the lines here. Just my suspicions. But it is a fact. They did plan to do this. Now,
no doubt.
We get into the fact of allowing this interrogation to happen, even though Kaczynski had guard duty, so he couldn't be there. This, to me, but this gets beyond my scope of knowledge. But now this becomes a real problem for Kaczynski. It actually becomes a problem for the state of allowing an interrogation of someone that has a lawyer. Now, I don't particularly care one way or the other how they try to justify it, but remember, there were phone calls that happened between O'Kelly and then eventually, I think, between O'Kelly and Fassbender. Fassbender, I think, is the one that called Ken Kratz, and Kratz approved it. Of course, we know eventually Kaczynski gets his ass thrown off the case because of all of this, but nothing happens to Ken Kratz. He's the prosecutor.
No,
he is in control of both sides of this. He has to look out for the rights of the defendant as well as doing his side for the state. I'm just saying that nothing happened to Ken Kratz. Now, should have something happened? Hey, I can't say that, but to me, there should have been something, but nothing ever happened.
Oh yeah, but then even if something happened to Kratz, the shit was already out of the horse.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes, but don't worry. We're going to go through the 2010 post-conviction readings.
Good.
They are unbelievable. And Mr. Kratz thought he was covered in Teflon. Oh, look, I was CC'd in those emails, but it doesn't mean I received them and read them then. So he was basically deflecting because he knew he got caught. He got caught red-handed being involved in emails between Brendan's attorney and himself. And not only that, you will reveal that they were providing information on where to find potential evidence against Brendan and against Stephen provided by Brendan's own attorney. And they even had to go, oh, don't put our names on the search warrant. We don't want to be involved. Right? And they talked about where they potentially could find a knife or a gun. And this was Brendan's own attorney working on behalf of the state. In other words, he was providing evidence to go against his client, against Stephen. This is Brendan's own attorney. And then what happened with Judge Fox, you just will not believe, right, Jack 61? He's another villain in all of this. Oh, yeah. So there's no doubt, and you'll see it, because they interrogated all the main players in 2010. And it's very, very simple. Kaczynski, O'Kelly basically came with the premise that their client, Brendan, was guilty, and they were working with a plea deal. So their whole idea is, yep, my client's guilty. Let's try and minimize the amount of years that he spends in prison. Not saying my client is innocent, he was coerced. They immediately went down the route that my client is guilty.
Yeah, they just, I mean, to me, Kaczynski and then O'Kelly joining a month later, within 90 days or less, they destroyed Brendan. And the press conference did significant damage to both. But
correct.
Kaczynski and O'Kelly finished destroying his chances for freedom.
Except Judge Fox exonerated everyone. They've done no wrong.
Right.
They've done no wrong. And we'll go through that. All right, guys. We're sort of now on the last part of our podcast. Let's have a look at where it all started. And it all started on November the 6th, right? So what had occurred was there was a search warrant put out to go and get Stephen Avery's Pontiac Grand Am. They were going to seize Stephen's Pontiac Grand Am. And they found it at Crivets. What did they find? They had a search warrant. They found two boys in the car. And it was Brendan Dassey, and I think the other person was Brian.
Yeah, they were going to the store to get sodas, convenience store.
They're going to get some sodas, I think Mountain Dew. They stopped the car, they impounded the car, and they asked Brendan and also Brian if they could talk to them. And they agreed. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over critical parts of what occurred between Brendan Dassey, Detectives O'Neill, and also Baldwin. It's very, very important. This, ladies and gentlemen, is where the downfall of Brendan occurred. Way before Fassbender and Wiegert. Fassbender and Wiegert put the cherry on top. But this is where things turned for Brendan. Brendan had no guardian and no legal representation with him at all. Brendan spoke freely with O'Neill and also with Baldwin. So guys, let's have a look at the next slide.
And I happen to know that this is one of your triggers, Dr. Silkman. What O'Neill did, yeah.
Yeah, these are all triggers. So some occasionally you might see me saying, I just got to step away. Now, this is a report written by O'Neill. Now, remember, reports are reports. We're going to actually go into what they actually discussed. But, Neville, do you see the slide?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Read it out. This is only part of the report, but it sets the scene of what happened. Let's go for it.
Okay. Marinette County Sheriff's Department Supplemental Report Investigative Decision. Date January 31st, 2016. Page 1 of 3. Officer Detective O'Neill. On Sunday, November 6, 2005, at about 11:55 a.m., I don't know what RO stands for.
Right along, I think.
Right along.
something officer, ride along officer, along with Detective Baldwin and Wisconsin Department of Criminal Investigation agents Kim Skrulinski and Deb, unsure last name, met with
That's Strauss. I think it's Strauss.
Yeah, met with Deputy Dagnitz on Parkway Road south of CTHX as he was directed to stop the Stephen Avery's vehicle, Wisconsin registration 187JJF. 1993 Pontiac Grand Am, two-door, blue in color, owned by Stephen Avery. The vehicle had previously been parked at the Avery property located at North 9493 Highline Road in the town of Stevenson. The Avery vehicle was now being operated by Stephen Avery's nephew, Brian J. Dassey, male, white, date of birth 7/15/85, with a passenger identified as the operator's juvenile brother, Brendan R. Dassey, male, white, date of birth October 1989. Both brothers reside with their mother at 12930A Avery Road in Two Rivers, Wisconsin. Agent Skrulinski had previously secured a search warrant relative to a missing person investigation, Calumet County, for the seizure of the Avery Pontiac, and subsequent to the stop by Deputy Dagnitz, the Avery vehicle was towed by Witt's Towing of Kratz to the Marinette County Sheriff's Department impound and followed to the impound without incident by Deputy Dagnitz. Agent Skrulinski and Agent Deb had talked to the driver Brian Dassey, and Detective Baldwin and myself met with and spoke to Brendan Dassey. It was told to us that both Dasseys had borrowed their uncle's car so as to go to the convenience store to buy some soda. I asked Brendan if he would sit and talk with Detective Baldwin and myself in my unmarked squad car. While in my car, I informed Brendan that he was not under arrest and that he was free to leave at any time. Brendan agreed to talk to us. Oh my God, already triggers.
Okay,
firing.
but look at this. They drove the car to go get some soda. So they're nowhere near Kratz, or their shack that they were staying. The police confiscated the car. Baldwin said, O'Neill said to Brendan, well, you're free to go if you want to. The trouble is, how are they going to get back?
Yeah,
Right?
where is he going to go to?
Right? How are they going to get back, both him and his brother Brian? Right? The squad cars could have just simply driven off. Oh, you don't want to talk to us? Okay. They had to walk back. So Brendan agreed. So put yourself in this situation. Remember the photographs that I showed you at Kratz, right? They're hearing of what's going on. They're hearing that Teresa's car, the RAV4, was found on the property. There are police everywhere. There are news reporters everywhere. There are police at Kratz. Now they come and confiscate the car and they say to Brendan, would you like to talk to us? Brendan agrees. So now it is Brendan in a squad car by himself with two detectives.
And let's remind everybody that this sentence, what he said, that I told him that he's free to leave, is pure bullshit. Those are just words. That means nothing. If Brendan said, okay, I want to go, right? But they're very important. Legally, they cover their behinds.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Legally, they're very, very important. Jack 61. Yes.
I was just going to say, sorry, I was just going to say that, let's say Brendan says, okay, fine, you know what? I don't feel comfortable with this. I just want to go. Can I go? Yes, I want to go. And they would say, well, wait, Brendan, how about one more question? Just answer this.
Yep.
And they would just prolong this misery. And we've seen this in other cases. You cannot just leave, even though they tell you that.
Yep.
They block the car.
Well,
you cannot say move, because that would be an assault to the officer.
Yep.
A seasoned criminal, might, or somebody that's been through the system, but they might say, you know what, screw you guys. I don't have anything to say. I'm leaving.
I want my lawyer.
I'm free to go.
Yeah.
Okay. I need to go. But
now
I did want to add two things, Doc, just briefly. I promise.
Yeah. Let's go for it.
Keep in mind what it says toward the beginning of this report. Well, number one, this report was written basically all of November, all of December, and at the end of January, he finally writes a supplemental report. Why did it take him so long? What the hell's going on with that? Number two,
to cover his behind.
Skorlinski and Strauss are involved already. They're there. They're involved. So don't discount that.
Yep. And remember, Deb Strauss was part of the civil suit depositions, right? When she questioned all the officers.
Heavily.
Right. And what Jack 61 and Neverly alluded to is very, very important. Do you honestly believe that O'Neill and Baldwin were simply going to let Brendan Dassey just walk away?
Never.
Not without peppering with questions. Just, hey, I got one thing I need to ask you.
If you don't believe me, and Jack 61 will back me up, because we did the podcasts and presentations on Nick Hillary. Remember Nick, who was accused of murdering Garrett Phillips? When they questioned Nick, and Nick's a very intelligent guy. Nick said, I want my attorney. I'm not answering any questions. I'm free to leave. What did the detective immediately do? He got up and where did he stand?
He blocked the door.
He blocked the door.
He blocked the door.
He blocked the door. Had Nick put one finger on the detective, they would have arrested him.
Yeah, for assault.
For assault.
Oh, right? And another thing, in regards to Brendan being underage without any adult company.
No guardian.
And a guardian, as long as Brendan agrees to sit in the squad and do this voluntarily, legally they're covered.
They're covered. Because
he agreed.
Yes, absolutely. Brendan Dassey, this was part of Brendan's entrapment.
Yeah, that would be considered a non-custodial interview.
Yep.
And legally, there's a huge difference here. Custodial and not custodial means you can't leave. You're a suspect and you're not leaving.
Correct.
We're going to hold you for now.
Correct.
Non-custodial means. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
No, go ahead.
Is custodial and being detained the same thing?
I guess you could equate it to being the same thing. If you're being detained,
basically,
that means you can't leave. You can't leave.
Same thing.
Correct. Correct. In a lot of cases, you'll see what happened with a lot of the Dasseys was, you're not under arrest, but you can't leave because they had to be taken to the hospital for a buccal swab. So you're not under arrest, but you can't leave because we want buccal swab, blood, or whatever it was.
That's custodial.
Custodial. Okay. Now, what I want you to see, guys, and also people in chat, is what transpired with Brendan. And what's critical here is Brendan goes from being interviewed to then being interrogated all at the same session. And they used the read technique on Brendan on November the 6th. So Jack 61, if we have a look at the next slide. So this is the report written by Detective O'Neill. Now remember, this is Brendan Dassey by himself. You know his character, you know his demeanor. He's in the car with two officers, and I think they've got the blinker light going. Tick tock, right? You can hear it in the background. This is what O'Neill actually said. Now, I don't recall. Do you see the slide?
Yes, I do.
Yep. Would you like to read those two paragraphs, please?
Okay. During the interview, Brendan told us that he lives with his mother on Avery Road next to his Uncle Steve in Avery. He told us that he had never seen Teresa Halbach nor her Toyota SUV at their property on Avery Road. When I asked Brendan specifically about seeing either Halbach or her vehicle on Monday, October 31st, 2005, he again told us he had not seen either. I had been informed by Agent Skorlinski that law enforcement also involved in this investigation had interviewed the school bus driver that would have dropped off Brendan and his brother Blaine at the end of their driveway in Two Rivers, Wisconsin on Monday, October 31st, 2005 at 3:45 p.m. And that driver had reported seeing both Halbach and her vehicle on the Avery property, and that she was taking photos of a vehicle for sale close to the road where the boys were dropped off. Stephen Avery's Blazer in parentheses.
Okay. Notice, before Skolinski comes in, Brendan goes, well, I haven't seen Teresa. I haven't even seen her RAV4. I don't even know who Teresa is. Agree? The very first thing that Brendan said, I haven't seen Teresa. I haven't seen a vehicle. Guys, would you all agree?
Yep.
Yes.
I'll go, I don't know who Teresa is. I've never seen her or a car. What is about to happen is the biggest tragedy to happen to Brendan. And that is Skolinski tapped on the door of the car, got O'Neill out of the car and said, mate, I got information that a bus driver on October the 31st who dropped off those two boys, Blaine and Brendan, she saw a photographer taking pictures of the car. Immediately, O'Neill goes, wait a minute. If Brendan's on that bus and Blaine, Brendan just told me he didn't see Teresa nor her RAV4. Wait a minute. How can that possibly be? Guys, would you agree? He's a detective.
He's fed bad information.
Yep.
Completely horribly wrong information.
Yeah, correct. But to Detective O'Neill saying, Brendan is lying to me. Would you agree?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's have a look at what happened next. Right? Let's have a look what happened next.
I just want to mention something that our mod Juke, who is in the chat, said.
Welcome, Juke.
What law enforcement learned on November 6th is that Brendan would lie in order to please the police and give them the answer they were looking for.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. He changed. Brendan, you watch what's going to
Malleable.
Yep. Watch what is about to happen. All right. Now, just Rhonda, do you see the slide?
Yes.
Yep. Would you like to read what happens next? This is after O'Neill is told information about the bus driver.
Okay.
Yep.
Excuse me. When I confronted Brendan about seeing Teresa Halbach when he had gotten off the bus with his brother on that Monday, Brendan now said that he had seen Teresa Halbach and her vehicle, and that he did not tell us because he did not want to go to jail. When I asked Brendan as to what he had seen of Teresa, Brendan said that while he was walking down the driveway with his brother, they had moved off to the side of the driveway to allow the Toyota SUV to go by. Brendan told us that the vehicle had been traveling out of the driveway toward the road and that it had only been on the property for 5 minutes. When asked again as to if he had seen Teresa out of the vehicle by the van by his and his uncle's home, Brendan now told us that while he was in his home after walking down the driveway to his home, from the kitchen, by the kitchen sink window, Brendan had seen his uncle Stephen Avery and the girl taking pictures by the van parked in front of his home.
Now,
boom,
guys, if you're a detective and Brendan Dassey now has just changed his narrative twice. Once, I saw Teresa and her driving her RAV4 drive past us. Me and my brother, we just stepped on the side of the road and she left the property, right? She only stayed there for 5 minutes. His second version was, when I got home, I looked out the kitchen window and I saw Stephen and Teresa, and Teresa was taking pictures of the van. Where have you heard this narrative of being behind the window and seeing Teresa take pictures from? Who told that now?
Bobby,
Bobby Dassey.
His brother Bobby.
His brother
Right.
Bobby, right? So quite clearly, he's hearing things and he just repeated them, right? Now to Brendan, he's innocent. He's acting in a naive manner. Oh yeah. I saw Teresa. Yeah, she drove by. She only stayed there for a couple of minutes and drove by me. Oh no. When I was inside my house, I saw Teresa with Steve. They were taking pictures and that's it. So from Brendan's perspective, did he do anything wrong from Brendan's perspective?
Not from his perspective, but as a detective, and I've never been in those shoes, but I'd be scratching my head at this point, thinking, "Wait a minute, what's going on here? What really happened here? Because you're not making any sense to me. That's me." But
Yep, 100%. Anybody else have any comments? So if you're a detective, you've now just heard Brendan say, I saw Teresa, I saw her Rav, and I saw Stephen. Guys, is that the impression you get? The detective is now going, oh my God, he
Right.
did see Teresa.
Yep.
Right? So let's forget about this report. Let's have a look at what actually transpired. So what I've done is I've taken snippets of the actual transcript. This is the narrative of what actually occurred, right? So now, remember, keep in the back of your mind that Skolinski has informed O'Neill about the bus driver seeing Teresa take pictures, right? So now they're going, okay, let's question Brendan a bit more deeply. Now, Jack 61, would you like to read out Detective O'Neill, the part of Detective O'Neill?
Sure.
Who would like to read out Brendan's part?
I can do it.
Okay.
But
And
I
who
also
would
have
like,
a follow-up question.
yeah. And who would like to read Baldwin?
I can.
Done. Yes, Neverly.
My question is, since Brendan said that he saw Teresa through the window, what's happening here? Is it like what's older, chicken or the egg? Did Brendan say this first, or did Bobby say this first? Because it's pretty much the same.
It's the same story. Correct. And I think
who said it first?
I think Bobby said it on November the 5th. Is that correct, Jack 61? Because he was interviewed several times.
Oh, okay.
Bobby Dassey was. Yeah.
But I think it was the 5th.
Yeah, but it's interesting that Brendan just merely repeated what Bobby said, right? How can you possibly have two boys? Remember the time difference between them. Teresa arrived at about 2:35. Brendan and Blaine arrived at 3:45, which meant that this is an hour after Teresa was there. And can you imagine Teresa being with a client for 1 hour to take two pictures with a car?
No.
So let's now go into what actually transpired. Let's go for it.
Okay. Questioning becomes confrontational. Read technique. Detective O'Neill. Okay, it's not too often that somebody's standing by your house, by the field, taking pictures of the van. You got dropped off from school. How many other people were on that school bus?
About 15, 16.
Plus the bus driver, right?
Yeah.
And you were dropped off. It's such an event that someone's standing in your field taking a picture of that van that you remember that you remember that too, don't you? The bus driver remembers it. The kids on the school bus remember it. The girl taking pictures. You remember that?
Well, I wasn't looking at the.
Huh?
I wasn't looking in the field.
You got off that bus and start walking towards your house.
Well, sometimes I'm talking to Blaine.
Yeah, you remember that girl taking that picture? You're getting off the bus. It's a beautiful day. It's daylight, and everybody sees her. You do too. Do you remember seeing that girl standing there taking a picture?
Maybe. I don't know. Don't remember. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is Technique 101.
101.
Yeah.
Yep. It's accusatory.
Yes.
You.
Suggestive. You.
Yep.
So it's like, are you sorry that you
You-
did it, or you're not sorry that you did it, but you
Yep.
did it?
Yep.
Same
But
thing.
but let's have a look at the next one.
Brendan, come on.
You do know, don't you? Brendan, you're not going to disappoint any of us. Think about that girl. Was that girl standing there taking a picture that day?
Maybe.
Ah, it's either a yes or a no. I mean, I'm not putting nothing in your mind. You tell me. If you remember that girl standing there taking pictures, but he's not putting nothing in her mind.
Oh, no, of course not.
Baldwin
That's
gets out.
no response.
Yeah. Was she? Huh? Why won't you tell? Why won't you tell me?
I was just trying to think of if I seen her.
Well, did you see her standing there taking a picture?
Yeah.
He had turned hostile at that point.
Yep.
I
Stop right
think you
there.
can hear it. Yeah, I think you can hear it in the recording.
Yep. Stop right there. That one word, yeah, changed everything. Would you
Yep.
agree?
Yep.
Well, they finally got him to that point because he
Yep.
was saying, no, I wasn't looking. No, I don't know. Well, I don't know. Maybe.
Yep.
Totally ambivalent about the whole thing, insecure. And then he goes, well, did you see her? It's a yes or no question. And he goes, yeah. And
So
boom,
So
confession.
think about this. The noose just got tightened around his neck because Brendan's going, huh? I never saw Teresa. I never saw her RAV4.
Yeah, because
Oh,
he's
wait a
repeating what he heard from Bobby.
Yep, exactly. But look at this. They're accusing him. Wait a minute. How many kids were on that bus? 15, 16? They all saw Teresa taking pictures or the
Plus
photographer
the
taking pictures.
driver. Yes.
And the driver.
Plus the driver. Brendan's going, well, wait a minute. How come I didn't see it? So he now got manipulated psychologically and very easily to say, yeah. So can you see, guys, the dynamics have now completely changed. Would you agree?
The suggestibility of Brendan has worked him into a corner, and he's like,
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Done.
the power of suggestion.
Yep.
Because they're claiming one thing, which is everybody saw her. We know that as if it's a fact. We don't know if that's true or not.
Yep.
All the kids saw it. The bus driver saw it. Did you? Well, let's say he goes, no, that's bullshit.
Well, it's
Then
like,
everybody-
it's like they're saying, well, everybody else saw it. You didn't see it. And so that corners him even further.
Of
Yep.
course. How could
Correct.
he go against 20 people?
Exactly. So he folded that easily. And I think you said the word, Neville, malleable. It's like plasticine. Very easily to manipulate. But of course, O'Neill and Baldwin don't know about Brendan and his character and his personality. O'Neill and Baldwin are going, this kid is lying. This kid knows more. Have a look at the next slide. Now they hone in on him big time. Let's go for it.
Why is her vehicle on your land?
Someone put it there like a family member trying to get Stephen in trouble.
Like another family member?
Or probably the old police officer, the one that put him in jail last time.
Whose fingerprints do you think we're going to find in that van or in that truck of hers?
I don't know.
Right? Now, I read further, Brendan wasn't referring to one of his family members. He was referring to one of the Hallbach family members that's planting the car there. But notice how the conversation is now confrontational.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Why is her vehicle on your land?
So it's like we have already established this is the fact. You saw it was on her land, their land. You saw her. Everybody else saw her. Now, why is it there?
Yep.
So they went from 0 to 60 really quickly.
Really far. It ramped up. So what has happened is he's gone from being interviewed to now full-blown interrogation. I don't believe his Miranda rights were read. I don't believe they were read.
But would Brendan really comprehend?
No.
Even if he heard those words and they were read it? Of course not.
No.
Yep.
Of course not. But they don't care because they checked off the box.
Yep. Now, we're going to jump ahead. We're nearly finished this part. Look what Brendan says. Okay, let's go for it. You see it, Neverly? You see the slide?
Yeah, sorry. I was unmuted.
Yep. Okay,
Yeah,
let's go.
What takes Stephen away from me?
No,
Like 18 years again?
no. Okay. I don't want that to happen, but I got to know the truth.
That is the truth.
Bottom line is, we don't want that to happen. And that's why we've got to do this thoroughly, and you can't hide things, okay? Because if things don't make sense, we can't stop our investigation. Do you understand that? And what you're telling us isn't making sense now. I don't want you to get caught up in something that you don't deserve to be caught up in, okay? You're a young man. You've got a long life ahead of you, okay? And I understand that maybe you don't trust the police, okay? But I'm here to tell you, I don't want to get things wrong, okay? We're trying to make sure that doesn't happen. You understand?
Yeah, but everybody thinks that Stephen was the last person that she's seen.
I don't know. We're assuming that she was the last, that was the last person that she was scheduled to go see other people after him, and she never made it to those other ones, okay?
Well, I heard that someone said that she went to Green Bay to see someone.
No, that was her next scheduled stop, and she never made it that far, okay? And now there's a truck on your land. Okay, so that's why we got to know exactly what you've seen, okay? And nobody's saying that Stephen did this, okay? Nobody's saying that. But to get beyond Stephen, we have to know the truth, okay? So why don't you tell me what happened to her?
I don't know what happened to her.
But, okay, so it's interesting. They're now full accusatory, okay? But notice what Brendan said. He talked about Stephen. You're going to take him away from me, aren't you? Brendan's concern was for his uncle. Do you think Brendan trusts the police? Yes or no?
No. And he said that actually to Wiegert and Fassbender.
Yes.
He said that.
Yes. Okay.
So that tells me, before we start again, that tells me that there were conversations going on. There were things being said around him, that he was at least picking up on the fact that there were huge problems in the past. So.
Yeah, and that they were probably in panic mode, and I could hear. Allegedly, Stephen saying, well, I don't want them to get me again after spending 18 years in prison or whatever. You know what I mean? Or somebody else saying. It's totally logical to me. It's totally logical. But you know what reminded me of Baldwin, giving this monologue basically between questions to Brendan, how, what's his name, was talking to Bobby. Not Remiker, but Dietering, exactly. He was like, oh, I'm at the end of my career and I'm not going to put my, career online and my job in security, to frame somebody. And he was actually saying everything what was the opposite.
Correct.
And that's what it sounded to me, what it seemed like Baldwin was doing as well.
Yes. And to answer Travis's question, no, this was not played to the jury. Only what is interesting is that only the March 1st interrogation was shown to the jury and not the entire March 1st interrogation either. None of this came up. But what was interesting is that Detective O'Neill was questioned, and don't worry, we'll show you what Detective O'Neill said about Brendan, right? But none of this was shown to the jury, right? And that's why this is critical to show how easily manipulable Brendan Dassey was. A lot of people, they blame Fassbender and Uyghur, and rightly so. But Brendan's downfall started on November the 6th by his ability to be malleable and suggestive, right? So let's continue, then we'll discuss it. Let's go for it, guys.
Brendan, she went into that trailer, didn't she? And that still doesn't mean anything, okay? Do you understand that? That doesn't mean anything. All that means is that she went into that trailer. That doesn't mean anything, okay? Did she go into that trailer?
No.
Where did she go?
She left.
She didn't leave, Brendan.
Yeah, she did.
Dassey, her truck's on your property. She didn't leave.
Someone could have planned it.
She didn't leave your property.
How do you know that?
Brendan,
Oh, sorry.
Brendan, you weren't telling us the truth about coming off that bus and seeing her that day.
There's a reason for that.
Okay. We can summarize it in just that sentence. See, with my finger pointing up? Let me repeat it. You weren't telling us the truth about coming off that bus. That's it. So Brendan really never did see Teresa nor her RAV. A huge mistake was made by the bus driver, Lisa Buchner. She got it totally wrong. And Brendan simply changed his narrative to fit what the bus driver said. The detectives are thinking, holy shit, the bus driver, 15, 16 kids, they lied. The detectives lied, said they saw Teresa. Oh, so now you've admitted seeing Teresa. Look at what the detectives did in the one interrogation session. What's her car doing on your property? She went in the trailer, didn't she? And Brendan's saying, no, the car could have been planted. The detectives already have written down in their notebook, the kid knows something. Guys, would you agree?
Agree.
Agree.
Yep.
Brendan Dassey is screwed, right? So when you look at all of this to answer Travis's question, this is what O'Neill said during the trial, right? Neville, do you see the next slide?
Oh, yes, I do. This,
yeah, we'll just
scream.
Yeah, there
we go.
So this is, they interviewed, they questioned Detective O'Neill, right? During the trial, and they asked him to comment on Brendan Dassey. Let's go for it.
It was his demeanor that I felt from all the years of training and experience I've had with dealing with people, an inner struggle, a conflict. He was hiding something. It was not going to be a 10-minute interview as to what he saw. There was something more. His body posture, his body language, just as I'm sitting here with you today in the openness. I mean, he was just totally different. And you know, from what I've seen in my experience, it was that he would suggest to me that there's something there. Jesus.
Yep.
Word salad. And this was objected and it was sustained, actually.
Yeah. So Detective O'Neill believes that he is a human lie detector, that he can detect that Brendan Dassey was hiding things from him. The problem is, Detective O'Neill had no idea that Brendan Dassey was just being Brendan Dassey. Would you agree? That's his normal demeanor. That's Brendan's normal demeanor. Quiet, shy, introverted. That's him. Neverly.
Yeah, but the way he said this, he goes, it's not like, just as I'm sitting here with you today in the openness.
Yes.
And I mean, he was just totally different. Yeah, so he's saying, I am the open, honest guy, and Brendan's was the opposite of that.
Correct. Cherie, did you have some comments? I don't recall.
I had a question. The Baldwin here is that's not Wendy, is it? Is it a different Baldwin?
No.
Oh, no. Totally different department.
Yep. It was male. Both were male detectives.
Yeah. This is Marionette County. She's Wendy Baldwin's Calumet County.
Yep. All right. Now, if you thought that was ridiculous and insane, remember the detectives spoke with Blaine, and Blaine was with Brendan. Now, this is definitely worth reading out, right? One day after they spoke to Brendan, they spoke to Blaine. Now, Blaine happened to be, you're not going to believe where he was. It was with Cornelie. And we all know
Oh, Jesus. Yes.
Right? What Cornelie did to Blaine. So they question Blaine. Who would like to read this out? I think it's important to read out. Who would like to read this one out?
I can do it.
Let's go for it.
Brendan Dassey, Monday, November 7, 2005 interview. Blaine said on Monday, October 31st, 2005, he got out of bed at 6:30 a.m. like he normally does. The bus picks him up and his brother, Brendan Dassey, in parentheses, Brendan, up at the end of the gravel driveway sometimes between 7:08 and 7:13 a.m. Blaine was asked if he was one of the first to be picked up by the bus driver or the last, and Blaine responded he was somewhere in the middle. Blaine was asked if he knew the name of his bus driver, and he said he did not. Blaine described his bus driver as a young, nice female. Blaine thought he rode on the bus 3, but he was not sure. Blaine's school day starts at 8 o'clock and it concludes at 3:05 p.m. Blaine described this day as a normal school day with nothing out of the ordinary occurring. Blaine stated that when school was over, he and Brendan rode the bus home and they were dropped off sometime between 3:30 and 4 p.m. Blaine said he and Brendan were dropped off at the same spot where they're picked up. Blaine was asked to describe where the bus drops him off and picks him up, and Blaine responded it was where the red/black Blazer is currently located. Cornelie stated on some occasions when Blaine arrived home from school, Blaine will call him. Blaine normally calls Cornelie sometimes between 3:30 and 3:50 p.m. Blaine was asked if he recalled seeing anyone on the Avery property when he got off the bus on the afternoon of Monday, October 31st, 2005. Blaine responded, not really, quote unquote. When asked what he meant by not really, Blaine said he did not see anybody. On October 31st, 2005, the red-black Blazer and the Monte Carlo were for sale at the end of the driveway. Blaine said he can recall those vehicles being there. Blaine indicated when he got off the bus, he and Brendan walked directly to their house. Blaine said he did not talk to anyone except for Brendan. He did not see anyone. He does not recall seeing a vehicle that does not normally belong in the driveway, and he did not see Stephen Avery.
So,
not to mention the fire smell and so forth.
Here's the issue. They spoke to the very same person who was with Brendan. Brendan gave the narrative. Yeah, me and my brother, we stepped off the road. We allowed Teresa to drive by. The second part was, when I was near the window, I saw Teresa and Stephen. They were taking pictures and the Rav was there, etc., etc. Here's his brother who was with Brendan together off the same bus. His brother goes, me and my brother, we just walked home. We did not see anybody. Oh, that red black blazer, is that near where the bus lets us off? So think about it. They knew that Stephen had set up an appointment to photograph Barb Yunder's minivan. Barb Yunder's minivan was several hundred meters down the road, down the gravel road. The bus driver cannot see that far down because there's a slight curve. That meant that the bus driver did not see Teresa Hallbach on October the 31st taking photographs of Barb Yunder's minivan. The bus driver, Lisa Buchner, did see Teresa Hallbach take a photograph of that red-black blazer weeks ago, not on the same date. Brendan Dassey got convinced that, oh my God, the bus driver saw Teresa Hallbach taking a photograph of the van because Brendan Dassey knew which car was for sale, what Stephen wanted to put the ad in for. So Brendan Dassey became convinced. Now, tell me, guys, how could it possibly be that they kept on pursuing the narrative that Brendan was hiding more when his own brother, who was with him, said, I saw nobody? But if you notice what Blaine said, did Blaine state that he saw Stephen?
Nope.
No.
No. And yet, what does Blaine say in court? That he saw Stephen walk to his burn barrel and drop something in a burn barrel.
Yeah.
Right? So quite clearly, Blaine is all over the place. But on November the 7th, he goes, no, me and my brother, we just walked home. We didn't see Teresa, didn't see Stephen, didn't see a RAV4. Neverly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy,
so
isn't
basically, it's very crazy. Basically, Blaine confirms what Brendan said.
Initially.
Which is
initially.
Yeah, initially. Brendan says what Bobby said. Correct?
Correct.
You know, seeing the car and that she left. But there were just like a few tweaky things that happened, and they discarded everything else and they went after Brendan.
Yes, correct.
Well, I have to consider what Skrlinski and Strauss were saying to Baldwin and O'Neill, which we don't have.
Yep. Correct. But you can see, guys, where the tipping point was here. The tipping point was when Brendan was first questioned. Brendan said, I haven't seen Teresa. I didn't see a RAV4. The tipping point was when Skrlinski tapped on the glass, got O'Neill out and said about the bus driver. O'Neill immediately comes back in and turns aggressive. The read technique starts.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Right? So hence, in the back of their mind, they're going, Brendan is hiding something. And then, as it's disclosed further along, as we'll see, oh my God, Brendan was with Stephen. Oh, wait a minute. That means that Brendan Dassey is Stephen Avery's alibi. Correct?
That's right.
Well, Brendan's there and he goes, I just helped my uncle. I didn't see anything. Then that's going to cast doubt to what Stephen is being charged for. So their approach is this, and we'll talk about when we're finished, guys. We're nearly finished. The strategy is this. Is Brendan Dassey a witness or is he a co-conspirator? They never entertained in their mind, A, is Brendan Dassey completely innocent? Did this kid give a false confession? Right, guys? They never, ever considered that. So,
well, I don't know. I think that given all the statements and, even going back to this point, as smart as Fallon is, I think he probably knew, but he didn't care. Because he needed, they had to do this to Brendan. They had
Yes.
to use him.
They
Yes, they
needed
did.
to
And he knew it.
secure a conviction. Yes.
Yes.
Correct. All right, guys. We've got 2 more slides to go, and then we can have an open discussion. if we have a look at the next slide, if you want a full analysis of what happened, I did a presentation years ago entitled Brendan Dassey and His Vulnerabilities. It's the only presentation I did where I was crying. I was actually crying. Tears were rolling down my face. I was so angry and infuriated at the stupidity of adults, the detectives, that they never realized what they were doing to this 16-year-old kid who knew nothing. So if you want to get a lowdown of what had happened on November the 6th, please check out this presentation. It's on our YouTube channel. And essentially,
we should probably put a link for that. I don't know how to do that though.
I think our super mod might be able to, if we have a mod there, she'll put the link in, or we'll put the link in the description. So essentially, this was the question asked. I asked, was Brendan a willing participant to the brutal murder of Teresa Halbach, or was he a victim of his vulnerabilities in trusting public officials? So you notice he never really questioned the detectives. He went along with what they said.
Even though he didn't believe them, but it's being a vulnerable situation, whether you are an adult, whether you're a child, with or without disabilities, you are basically tricked and stuck in that situation.
Correct.
How do you go against the law enforcement?
Correct.
Brendan said that he doesn't trust them, but he didn't have a choice. How's he going to go against them?
Correct. So basically, the takeaway message of all of this is Brendan Dassey was willing to change his narrative when directly challenged by law enforcement. And I agree with you, Barbara. Brendan was a victim of the system. They knew that Brendan, your son, was very, very easily manipulable, and they went for it. And Brendan complied because in his mind he's going, wait a minute, the detectives just told me that the bus driver and 16 kids on that bus all saw Teresa taking pictures. Therefore, how come I never did? Okay, I'll agree with them. Now, as a 16-year-old kid, tell me yes or no. If you say, yeah, I saw Teresa, yeah, I saw her Rafwa, I saw her with Stephen, to you, does that mean you've done anything wrong? Let's go down the panel. To you, would you think you've done anything wrong by just saying, yeah, okay, I saw him? Jack 61, what do you think?
I mean, for me, at 16, I was pretty pig-headed. I probably would have never said it if I didn't actually see it.
Yep.
But I knew, other friends and so forth that probably would and wouldn't think anything about it.
Yeah, okay, I saw it. To him, he's not thinking, oh my God, in 5 or 6 months' time, they're going to put handcuffs on me.
I'm screwed.
They're going to implicate me in rape and murder.
No way.
To him, he goes, okay, yeah, okay, I agree, I saw it. He's not thinking anything malicious. What about you?
I agree with that.
You agree with that? Just wonder, could you see Brendan Dassey just saying, oh, yeah, okay, I saw it?
Well, yeah, I can see him doing that. And, if I thinking with, how I might have felt like, oh, well, if 15 or 16 other kids my age, around my age, saw this, and the bus driver saw this, and they've all admitted to it, then there's nothing wrong with me admitting to it.
He's just one of the pack.
He's just one. He's just, And so I don't think at all. In fact, I would imagine he might have even been thinking, whew, good, I can just say what everybody else said, and we're all together, and they can't just come after me. Kind of like maybe a relief in his mind, thinking that, okay, good, this is all over for me now. What might have been what he thought.
Yep. He in my opinion, he just went with the flow. Goes, okay. If you said I saw her, okay, yeah, I saw her. Okay, let me out. I want to go home now, right? So to him, he never understood the nefarious actions of the detectives until they started hammering him. Well, what's her car doing on your land? Let me tell you. Let me get some water. If you remember the interview, they even said to him to make him feel guilty, is Teresa cold? Remember what they said, Jack 61? Is she cold? Her family misses her.
Yep.
Do you know where she is? Do you realize that Teresa needs medicine? We need to give her her
Guilt trip.
medicine.
Yeah.
They really hammered on him. He's got no idea, but to their mind, they feel that he's holding back information. I don't recall. What do you think? For Brendan, any big deal?
It wasn't any big deal that what? I guess I didn't quite understand the question.
Was it a big deal that he admitted seeing Teresa?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay. What about you, Deverly? Do you think it was a big deal that he said yes?
Of course, for the outcome of the whole thing, and that they use that as he implicated himself basically.
Yes.
Somehow. But would I have said that back when I was 16, going on 10, looking like 12? I would probably think, oh gosh, like shit, everybody else saw it, but I didn't. Like, oh, here I go again. Because I was beating, to my own drum back then. And I think I would have said, like, I guess. Yeah.
Correct. For me, it's very simple. He saw that they were hammering into him. He saw it as a get out clause, right? That's exactly what the read technique does, right, Jack 61? Right, guys? It gives you two options, a hard option and an easy option. He saw the easy option. He goes, okay, yep, I saw her, which meant, hey, guys, let me out. I didn't do anything. I saw her. No problems. I agree with the rest of the boys or the kids on the bus. I agree with the bus driver. She's older than me. She's our bus driver. If she saw Teresa, well, then I must have seen her too. He had no idea of the implications, but Brendan Dassey started to get what they were getting at because they were hammering him. Did you see her? Did she go in? They even asked him, did you see her go in the trailer? It's okay, Brendan. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. It was the standard read technique 101. Guys, what do you think?
I agree completely.
All right. Well, look, guys, let's wrap it up. Let's wrap up today's presentation. So what I've done is I've written a summary. And I'm going to do this for each of the podcasts that we do. So let's see what we got out of today's presentation. I'll read it. One day after Teresa's RAV4 was found on the Avery salvage yard, the 16-year-old Brendan Dassey was interrogated using the read technique by detectives O'Neill and Baldwin. Brendan Dassey had no idea what they were doing to him, right? But it was the read technique. It was accusatory, right? They were hammering into him. Point number 2. Brendan Dassey did not have an adult guardian with him when questioned. Brendan Dassey willingly answered the detective questions. He had no idea what they were leading to. Brendan Dassey, when confronted, had changed his recollections twice, all based on what the bus driver had allegedly seen on October the 31st, 2005. Lisa Buchner, who was the bus driver, was mistaken, and she even admitted it in court. She had no idea about the day, the date, the time, the week, the month when she actually saw Teresa Horbach. She was confused. But it had tragic consequences for Brendan. Brendan Dassey had now mistakenly associated himself with seeing, think about this, with seeing the missing person, Teresa Halbach, her RAV4, and the primary suspect in the case, Stephen Avery. Brendan Dassey had associated himself with all of that. He had no idea. The detectives believed that Brendan Dassey knew more than what he was disclosing. That's exactly what Detective O'Neill said on the stand during Brendan Dassey's trial, right? He thought he was lying to him. Brendan Dassey unknowingly became a person of interest to law enforcement. And you'll see what happens next when Skolinski interrogates Brendan. And the final point is this. Blaine Dassey, Brendan's brother, who was with Brendan, did not see Teresa, her RAV4, nor Stephen Avery. But did the detectives hammer into Blaine on not seeing Teresa or her RAV4 or Stephen? No.
No, of course
No.
not.
They
No.
did not, and
They did
that's a really great point right there. I was going to say that. It's a great point. They just like, okay.
Yep.
Not
Except,
only that, I'm sorry for interrupting,
not at
but
all.
to me, they would have been able to see the difference in demeanor, cognitive
Yes.
ability between two brothers, Blaine and Brendan, immediately.
Yep.
Immediately.
Yep. But you see, Blaine later on said a piece of information that helped the investigators. So they're willing to forgive. Okay, Blaine didn't see the RAV4, Teresa. Oh, but Blaine saw Stephen carry a rubbish bag to the burn barrel. And what's really ironical is that when they questioned Brendan, did you see your uncle go out with the rubbish bag? Brendan goes, no. So Brendan contradicted his own brother Blaine. So you can see that it's a terrible, terrible situation, all involving young people getting a lot of things wrong and mixed up. All right, guys. Well, look, today was a bit of a shorter presentation. I hope that everyone enjoyed it. I think that way, if we break it up into smaller podcasts, you can go over it because we have covered a hell of a lot of information. What does everyone think of what we've covered so far today?
Well, I think it was a great opening, laying the foundation basically of, this, at least this first part going through, because there's so much with Brendan.
Yes.
That's really based on nothing but words, but there's so much
Yes.
Interaction and action with law enforcement, prosecutors, lawyers. It's such a tragic story for me. It's just tragic.
It is. And in the subsequent podcast, we're going to deep dive into those interrogations. The March 1st interrogation, we're going to read the whole lot. So get ready. We're going to read it. We're going to analyze it. We're going to go through the entire lot. We're also going to look at Brendan Dassey's trial testimony, the whole lot, with his questioning, with his attorneys, and with Fallon. We're going to go through all of it, deep dive into it. So we're going to leave no stone unturned. All right, guys, do we have any final comments before we do questions?
Well, I wanted to thank everybody in the chat because this is very hard on everybody, and it's not easy to sit through pretty much the whole summer going over Brendan's ordeal in all of this, because it's really triggering. It's just a tragic thing that happened. But we're glad that you're here to catch the foundation of the whole series. And we really appreciate your input. And as always, you guys are on point. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Do we have any other comments, guys?
I do have some comments, but we'll save that to our wrap up before we get out.
Okay. Do we have questions?
We do.
Okay. Let's go for it, guys.
Rhonda, do you want to do these or you want me to do them? You're more than welcome to go through these. And
Oh, it's up to you, whatever you prefer, Jack.
Well, you penned a good portion of these. I only did a few before you got here, so
Oh,
just go for it.
okay, not a problem. Okay, so I'll start back with the earliest ones coming forward. Anthony Hills asks, did Brendan ever divulge what happened at Fox Hills for those 24 hours in company with Blaine and Barb?
I've never heard of it. I've never.
No.
Now I know that Barb is in chat. Oh, I'd love to get her feedback on what they said. I know that
there's only been a few statements, as far as I know, of a few things that happened that night, but no real solid documentation, as far as I know.
Yep, I know that Blaine was brought somewhere else, and Blaine mentioned in the trial that Skolinski, I think it was right up in his face, was
Fassbender.
very angry.
Fassbender.
And Fassbender, they were very angry with him. They were basically saying, stop protecting your uncle. And they stormed out. Yep, but I'll if Barb is still there, I'll love to get her feedback on what they said.
Yeah, so that's a no real documentation.
Yep.
Okay, we'll wait for Barb to see if Barb can answer us. In the meantime, Alligator 57 asks, as background, is there a Brendan Dassey, I'm guessing it's Brendan Dassey, timeline document showing his activities and whereabouts on October 31st and thereafter? I don't know if that's about Brendan or Bobby.
Brendan,
probably,
I'm sure.
Probably Brendan. I've tried.
Brendan.
I've tried trying to develop a timeline for Brendan Dassey, and the big issue with Brendan is that he gets his times, dates mixed up, like all of them do. He's not the only one. And if you believe Brendan's narrative is very straightforward. Basically, he got off the bus at 3:45, arrived home at about 4. Him and his brother Blaine have a discussion about who's going to use the telephone.
Yep.
Because when you're on the telephone, you can't use the computer. They only had one line. So basically, Blaine rang up his friend to organise to go trick-and-treating. And what Brendan loves doing is playing computer games. So Brendan was basically in his room playing PlayStation 2. Blaine had organised to be picked up to go trick-and-treating. And so he got picked up. Barb came home, spoke with Brendan. Can't remember the precise time. I think it was around about 5-ish.
Yeah.
And about 6 o'clock, Mike Corneely phoned. Oh boy, this is a very important phone call because Fassbender and we get denied that it ever happened. And that's important because it means that Brendan was still home at about 6. And Corneely spoke with Brendan for about 5 minutes and explained that his brother Blaine had gone off trick-and-treating. Barb got picked up by Scott Tadich to go and see his mother at Green Bay.
Yep.
I believe that Stephen had phoned Brendan to come and help him. Brendan went over there and helped his uncle do 2 things. Pick up items around the salvage yard using a golf cart, cabinet, wood, brush, bits and pieces to burn. Brendan Dassey also helped Stephen clean up the garage. According to Brendan, it's because Stephen had been working on a vehicle and one of the lines underneath the car got snipped and transmission fluid, which is red in color. You could buy it. You could see it. It looks like blood.
Well,
right?
if it's burnt, it's extreme. It stains so badly.
Yeah, it's dark. So they used petrol, paint thinner, and bleach to clean up the garage using some rags. And they threw them on the fire. They saw the fire a little bit. And Brendan even said we stood about 5, 10, 15 feet away from the fire, watched it for a while, and Brendan went home and Stephen carried on. And that's it. And Brendan got bleach on his jeans, Brendan said that he washed his clothes, and that's something he normally does. And he went to bed. That's Brendan's story. And the person that's missing is all the raping, murdering, and dismemberment, shooting of Teresa Halbach, because it never happened. So Brendan's narrative is extremely straightforward, very simple. And of course, the investigators think he was completely lying.
And not to muddy this water up at all, but there's a call on October 30th between Stephen and Jody. Brendan is there. Brendan is over there on the night of the evening of the 30th.
Yes.
That's an interesting thing.
Which
gets
is,
talked about.
Which I think is the same night that his mum called Stephen to get Brendan to put on a jacket because it was cold.
It very well could have been. I can't remember that date. I think you're right, Doug.
Yep. So I think Brendan got the days mixed up. And even Bobby Dassey thought that the fire was November the 1st. Right? And then
that's right.
Bobby
That's
Dassey
right.
changed his narrative to say, oh, yeah, there was a fire on October 31st. So these guys are getting their times mixed up, their days mixed up, all of them.
Well, having a fire, again, we talked about it a lot, but having a fire, for people that live out in rural areas, whether it's a burn barrel or a little pit behind their house.
Yeah, it's no big deal.
It's nothing.
No, correct. So in terms of a narrative, a timeline, it's very hard to get it precise. Yeah. But if Brendan told the truth, it's a very, very boring, mundane day. And even Brendan said, I went home, I went to bed, got up and went to school again.
Right.
That's no different to any other day. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. From Anthony Hills, was Brendan's push bike complete and in working order on 31 October of 2005?
I think Brendan even said it goes, there's a problem with that. I don't have a push bike.
I was just going to say, what push bike?
Yeah.
I think he had a bike, but it had mechanical problems or flat tire or something.
Yeah. And remember what we said right at the beginning of the podcast, when Brendan and Blaine got off the bus, where did they walk past? They walked past the mailboxes. And later on, you'll see what the narrative is, that as Brendan said, I got on my bike and I went to go get the mail for Stephen. And you're thinking, wait a minute, this is a 16-year-old kid. He loves playing computer games. There's no freaking way he's going to get on a bike, go all the way back down the gravel road where he just walked past to get the mail for Stephen, because the person who gets the mail for Stephen routinely is Mama Avery. Mama Avery brings the mail down in her golf cart, talks to her son, delivers the mail. Are you trying to tell me that Brendan Dassey is now going to go all the way back, get the mail, sort it out, and hand deliver a letter, a business letter or whatever, to his uncle?
No.
Complete, utter garbage.
Okay, next question by James Crane. Could the defense have called Brendan to the stand, and what would be the pros and cons?
No. You're talking about in Stephen's trial? No, yes, because Kratz never called him. Kratz never called him up.
Right. Well, it didn't sorry, go ahead, Jack.
There are legal issues. You were going to say it, I think, Rhonda.
Yeah. Right. It seems like, if I remember correctly, if they called Brendan to testify against Stephen, then they weren't going to be able to call a case against Brendan, a case on Brendan. If I'm not mistaken, I think it had something to do with that.
Yeah, correct. Even King Kratz said in his book, it would have been a mistrial. Would have been regarded as a mistrial. And that's why Kratz in his book said, I couldn't have used the same argument that I used against Brendan for murdering Teresa Halbach as I used for Brendan of murdering Teresa Halbach. Hence, one victim, two different scenarios. Kratz did it deliberately. And did you know that Strang and Buting were hoping that they'd call Brendan, because I only found out that Strang and Buting hired a professional involved in false confessions.
Yes.
Did you know that?
Yes.
They hired a they had all the stuff ready to call him to say what Brendan said was all bullshit. It's a false confession. They would have ripped Brendan apart on the stand. Kratz, Fallon, and Garn knew this and said, we're not calling Brendan. So it was a strategy. Correct.
Okay. Let's see. From KT Burr. I forget, why did Steve call Teresa Halbach? I know he hung up after just seconds because he saw her outside, but why did he call to ask if she's coming rather than wait for her to call him?
It's Stephen used *67, I think, a couple of times, and it actually didn't make any difference at all, because when he was going to call Teresa Halbach, he saw Teresa drive up, because apparently Stephen was in his bedroom and he saw her throughout the window and hung up. The reason for calling that Stephen Avery gave for calling Teresa after was they had an end loader that they wanted to put in Auto Trader magazine. And he called her back.
Dolores had asked him if he mentioned it or said anything to her, I think that's right.
Yeah. And that's why Stephen called her back at 4:35, which...
But it didn't matter, because as we've seen throughout virtually all of Teresa's calls, she fielded all of her calls.
Correct. Yep, correct. So it had no impact.
No,
but
she never answered.
If you're Kratz, you have to turn it into a nefarious activity, because Kratz's whole hypothesis is that Teresa Halbach was lured onto the Avery salvage yard by Stephen Avery, even though A, Teresa knew who Stephen was, B, had been to the Avery salvage yard before, 3, was given instructions never to go inside a person's trailer. Remember what her partner said? Tom Pierce even warned her, there were people trying to do funny business and try and give her drinks, etc., etc. So she's a 25-year-old woman. She's not silly. She's out in the open, right? Out in the open. This is the middle of the day, right? On a public, on the day that the Avery salvage yard is open for business, anyone can walk in. Stephen was in the middle of a civil suit. His attorneys could have arrived. His attorneys could have called. His fiance called him twice, right? So Kratz had to make everything nefarious. And that's why Kratz said Teresa Halbach was lured onto the Avery salvage yard. And that's why, remember, Jack 61, remember, guys, why Kratz had to keep on talking about the Tau incident, right?
Yep.
And Teresa Halbach even gave Stephen her personal phone number, cell phone. So Stephen, if he wanted to do something nefarious, he doesn't ring Auto Trader. He rings Teresa, does a hustle shot. Oh, by the way, I've got a vehicle at Cuss Road or somewhere else.
Right.
Can you come and photograph it? No. All the paperwork led directly to his front door. What type of criminal is Stephen Avery? All the paperwork led directly to him.
Yet Kratz made a point in court when Fassbender was on the stand that he said, well, the connection of Teresa and the trailer was her phone number written on that sticky note by the back door. Yeah.
Correct. Yep, correct. 100%. And also the fact that Stephen had a bill of sale, I think, and also the Auto Trader magazine. Right?
Yeah, to me, that's just part of doing business. She handed it to him. He put it on his desk.
It was a normal transaction.
Right. It was a non-event. It was a non-event.
A total non-event, but Kratz had to make it nefarious.
Yes.
And that's how come Brendan got pulled in.
Okay.
That's exactly what happened with every accuser in a Daniels case. Anyway, that's beside the point.
Good point.
Yeah. Anthony Hills asks, where is the audio from Fox Hills? Good question.
Yeah. The recorder
Was that a
broke.
rhetorical question?
Well,
Had to be.
Yeah.
well, Barb in the chat said that all she remembers that there was no interview, that they put all of them in the same room and that they went to sleep. They said you can use the pool, but they didn't have bathing suits. They just had the clothes on their backs. So, okay, so if nothing happens there, then why would Wiegert say that they talked to Brendan, but they didn't have it recorded because they didn't have an external battery or charger or whatever?
Well, no, I think it was Remaker that said that for some reason the recorder wouldn't work. I think it came from Remaker.
I think it was weak. Okay, I could be wrong. But then if Barbara says that there was no interview, they didn't talk to them at all, then why would they say, yes, we did, but we don't have it recorded because for whatever reason and whoever said it?
I don't know.
Exactly.
The point is that they said that there was an interview and that they talked to Brendan. So is that why the judge said, well, you don't have it recorded, basically it's hearsay, right?
Yes.
We need a clean confession, and that's what Kratz wanted to do, and they sent poor Brendan to O'Kelly, and O'Kelly said, here you go, sign here. Yes, I'm sorry for doing this, and no, I'm not sorry for doing this.
Yes.
So it's all bullshit, basically.
That came after. And what I didn't realize, guys, is that O'Kelly had interviewed Brendan twice.
Yes.
Did you know that?
I did.
Yep.
Others might not have, but yeah.
Yep. And don't worry, we're going to go through the entire questioning of Brendan by O'Kelly. I've got the transcript. We're going to go through it line by line. Don't worry about the video. We're going to read it out. And what he did, you just cannot believe. But we're going to do it. Or I promise, we're not going to show any videos because there's a lot of pause. Some of the pauses, right, Jaxie's one, go for 30 seconds where nobody's saying anything. Forget it. We're going to read it. We're going to analyze it. And I think that's much more impactful. Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Okay. Anthony Hills asks, Faxbender said on camera, Brendan was interviewed 5 times. Where's the 5th interview?
He was.
November 6th.
Yep.
227.
Yep. And potentially 3 times on on February the 27th because of the Fox Hills. So twice on March the 1st, twice on March the 1st, and also one on May 13.
It's actually 6 times.
Yep. Correct.
Because there were 3 interviews on the 27th.
And also Skolinski. Don't forget Skolinski on the 10th.
Oh, damn, I forgot. So 7 times.
Yep. And I think he was interviewed 3 times in 48 hours.
Yes.
So it went on.
Right.
Yep. And they put him out of school.
Yeah, they were after him.
Yep.
Okay. Under Your Scars asks, why doesn't Kathleen take Brendan on?
It's too much. It's way too much.
Would it be conflicts of interest or no?
That's what I was going to say. It would definitely be. Sometimes the clients could waive a conflict.
Yes.
I don't know.
Just like in Charlie and Donna Adelson, they have the same attorney, and Donna, the mother, had to waive their whatever rights or something, and she had to go in front of the judge to say, yes, I understand that this is a conflict. Yes, so it would be a conflict of interest.
The Brendan has got the 2 best people in the world, in my opinion, Laura Nyrider and Steve Drizzen. You've got no idea the anger that's out in the community about this, about what happened to Brendan. You've got no idea. I'm only just starting to comprehend it and understand it from a legal standpoint. From a legal
anger.
we're not talking about armchair people like us,
No.
non-professionals. And I know that I don't recall is an attorney, so she has a legal background. We're talking about hundreds of people in law enforcement and in the legal profession who are so fucking angry. You got no idea. I'm only just starting to feel the heat from the anger. Okay, with Brendan, with Stephen, there is forensic evidence, but you can argue it. But with Brendan, I heard detectives, I heard law enforcement officers, I heard professors, university academics who, and Jack 61 will back me up, who are seething at the shit that happened to Brendan, and it was allowed in Wisconsin.
Yes.
Their minds are blown. These are people in the criminal justice system.
From all over the country.
Not only that, all over the world, actually,
that
if I'm not mistaken, but not only that, not only in the legal profession, in all aspects, but also in mental health and child psychology fields. There's a great deal of anger. I just would recommend, again, if you have missed it, didn't hear it before, haven't read it on your own before, that you need to read the Under the Hood article, I guess it would be, that talks about all of the cues that Brendan was. How do I explain it? Under the Hood is just, it's all about Brendan and his, how he was interrogated and all the different, like Doc's been talking about here tonight, all the different misuses and techniques that they used against him, and things that should have been cues or clues in his responses to law enforcement that they completely overlooked. So if you haven't read that, or you haven't heard our podcast where we read it quite some time ago, definitely check out Under the Hood. Excellent article.
Yes, and also Tracy Keogh has an extensive website, and she goes into Brendan Dassey, his personality, and all the things that did occur. It's phenomenal. I had no idea at the impact that Brendan's case has had legally, intellectually, psychologically throughout the entire world. The spotlight is firmly on Wisconsin. Okay, with Stephen, I understand the controversy. With Brendan, there are no excuses. It's really that bad.
Yeah,
really bad.
I agree.
Can you drop a link, homie?
I can when I get done here.
Okay.
I'll have to. Yeah, I'll get my hands on it and put it in.
Maybe Jack can add it to the description.
The description. Yeah. Oh, okay. Thanks, Cherie. Okay. Next
Thank you,
question.
girl.
Yeah. Next question by Duke Juki Levin. Did quote unquote everyone on the bus see Teresa?
No one. I lied.
Did they interview anybody on the bus?
No,
that's just it. Nobody was even interviewed.
In fact, not even the bus driver saw Teresa Hallbach taking photographs on October the 31st, 2005. The one of the biggest issue is that the police are permitted to lie, and that's what they did.
Yep.
Yeah, so no one on the bus saw anything. Not even the bus driver. Not even the bus driver.
Right. No. Okay, next question from Anthony Hills. What time was Bobby interviewed on the 5th and where?
He was definitely interviewed on the 5th.
I'd have to look it up. I can look it up.
I'll have to look. I'm going to check queso, but he was definitely questioned. When we were doing with the other Reading with the Crew series, we actually looked at all of his interrogations, every one of them, and how Bobby actually changed his narrative. on different things. And remember, it was Jody who brought them on to Bobby Dassey, because Jody is the one that said, oh, Stephen told me that Bobby was the last person to see Teresa. And remember when they questioned him and Bobby said, oh, did he say that? Did he? Well, he would stab you in the back. So, yeah. But let me just see if I could find it. Jack, are you looking it up as well?
I am trying, but Adobe's being really slow here. Jesus Christ.
Yep, I'll see if I can find it.
Okay, while you guys are looking for that, if it's okay, I'll move on to this question by Trav. Would you guys ever consider doing a podcast reading Brendan's transcriptions with law enforcement? It still blows me away that some say he committed his guilt and others state coercion. Same words, opposite options.
Yeah, we're going to do it. We are going to do it. We're going to, we've done the 6th, the pertinent parts of the 6th. We're going to read parts of his interrogations on the 27th, the pertinent bits, right? Because there's a lot of fluff, but we're going to go straight into the heart of the matter. And the 27th are very interesting. The one we're going to read in full, I don't care how long it takes. We're going to do March the 1st, 2006. That's the interrogation that got him arrested.
I found Bobby's first interview.
The 5th. It is the 5th. I just found it too by Deidre.
Yeah, by Deidre. It was at 5:53 p.m.
Yep.
With Jacobs. MTSO Dennis Jacobs.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Deidre interviewed him twice then?
Yes. He was interviewed on the 9th. And then remember that in 2017, they went back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Bobby Dassey was interviewed several times. Correct. Remember, they took him to Aurora to get the swabs and take photographs.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Do we have any more questions?
Nope, that's it.
Wow. Yeah. So again, guys, thank you so much. And I hope that you've enjoyed the format. Neville and I, we already put in a couple of weeks and we still got a lot more to do. But we want to do this sensitively, and we want to do it thoroughly because we believe Brendan's story is very, very important. And I think, Trav, that you hit the nail on the head, and that is this. How can you have two disparate groups of people looking at the same thing? And one group saying he was coerced by his uncle. His uncle did it, made him do it. You got another group of people, intellects, academics, lawyers, professors saying, that's the biggest lot of shit I've ever seen in my life. The police coerced him. And what is the distinguishing factor? Let's look at the forensic evidence. What does the forensic evidence say? And I know just Rhonda's going to hit me. Corroboration is clear, is key. Here are the two alternatives. What does the forensic evidence gathered by their own CSI? Where does it tip the scales?
Right.
Stephen?
There's not even forensic or circumstantial evidence against Brendan. Not even that.
Yeah.
Nothing. Just
Nothing.
words only.
Yep. So the question is this.
Words only.
Was it his uncle that coerced him? That's the questions. Remember the questions right at the start of the podcast. Who coerced him into rape and murder? Was it his uncle? And Jack 61 will back me up. The arguments that are happening on X, oh my God, right? Was it his uncle? Or was the whole thing just bullshit and Brendan just made it up and it's his words? So what does the forensic evidence tell you? And I think that's what we're going to do is the March 1st interrogation, we're going to unpack it like you've never seen it before. We're going to show you all the forensic evidence or lack of. You make up your own decision. your own mind. We're going to show you the whole lot, right? And that's why we need to do this over a long period of time and ask the question, how on God's earth did 12 jurors find that kid guilty, right? For murder, rape, mutilation of a corpse, and he's going to be in prison to 2048 till he's 59. And if they let him out, he has to be, as a registered sex offender, the kid's never had sex in his life, right? So how did 12 people get it so wrong? But not only those 12, all the precipitation that occurred after, all the dominoes that occurred after. And if you see someone like Knight Rider and Drizzen speak at conferences, you can hear the desperation in their voice, asking exactly the same questions. How the hell did this happen? And it did.
And just to remind everybody, Brendan's confession, which is words only, no forensic, no circumstantial, nothing, just words only, that is not an isolated case either.
No.
Remember Ryan Ferguson and his friend,
Yes.
Charles, what's his name?
Erickson,
Who had a dream.
A dream.
I have a dream. He had a dream and he spilled the beans, and both of them were, whatchamacallit?
Oh, they'll put him in prison for life.
Yeah, exactly, for life.
Murder.
Based on a dream.
Based on a dream, correct.
They were not there. They didn't have nothing to do with that. Nothing.
And no forensic evidence.
Absolutely nothing.
And Ferguson came from a good family. Very smart, very intelligent.
Oh, his dad was a tiger, man. Yeah.
Made no difference. So
no.
the important thing, and the reason why I'm passionate and everybody on this panel is passionate, and also people in chat, is that you don't think it can happen to you or your child.
Think again.
Yes, it can.
Yeah.
Very quickly. Very quickly.
Scary stuff.
You saw how from November the 6th, it escalated. It escalated rapidly, right? And keep that in mind. It escalated from nothing to him being a primary suspect.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, there's a question from Mr. President in the chat. He says, Jack, can we FOIA documents related to wiretaps or bugs in homes?
There are exceptions. I doubt it. I doubt it unless that became part of a case.
Yep.
Unless it is submitted as, that we can see it and actually put our hands on it.
Only if it's a part of the case. It was like if it was submitted through court, right? Like if they use it in the trial.
Right. Unless you have some documentation that proves that there was a process.
Yep.
You got to connect the dots. Otherwise, I can just say, I don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy. Prove it.
Yeah. Prove it.
Yep. Just like when Curtis Drum said he saw a camera on the plane, people taking pictures. Jet 61 forward them and he goes, what are you talking about? There are no pictures. They're not going to release photographs to say, yeah, you're right. Actually, looking back at it, we couldn't see, there's no rep there, right?
Right.
Because the moment you do that, you give legitimacy to Tom Sawinski. That's bad. That's dangerous. So you say, oh, we got no photos.
And that's exactly what they did.
Yeah. So look, guys, I hope that you've enjoyed the podcast. I hope that you enjoyed the format. Again, guys, we want to do shorter podcasts, do reviews, so we can answer your questions. And we'll be back next week to continue part 2. And we're going to deep dive now more into what actually happened to Brendan. So, guys, do we have any final comments?
Are you going around the table or?
Yes, let's go around the table. Jack 61.
Yeah, like I told you last night, Doc, I have a bit of a embarrassing kind of situation here.
Oh.
And well, it's embarrassing in the fact that I forgot about this. So I was going through, I actually did an open record request. I was talking to a doc, and he wanted some things that we don't have. We've got it, but we need it in another format. So I was thinking, you know what? While I request this, I'm going to request a few more things that we just don't have. So I'm looking through the Kratz Discovery emails, and I got to looking. I saw Avery jail calls or jail visits, and I'm thinking, shit, I need to get those. And then I thought, I've already got those. Why am I? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, where's the hell I got it at? So I started looking back to one of the requests I did last year. This is really embarrassing, and we had several. I mean, this was the request that I did in this particular one. I got a bunch of stuff, bunch of recordings. So I got to looking deeper, and I have a ton of Avery jail visits that I have never
You've
converted.
already got them.
There's probably 40. I'm not kidding, of jail
Oh,
visits that I have not converted and put on YouTube, but I'm going to do it. It's embarrassing for me to sit here and say, yeah, I forgot about it. But there are a lot of other items in that request that we talked about, and it just rolled off the plate. So anyway, these are
No,
from 2000. These are from 2006. There are a bunch of them. So I'll get them converted as soon as I can and get them on YouTube.
fantastic. Thank you so much, Jack. Are
you're
you doing an open mic tomorrow?
Yep. We're diving right back into the queso calls, dispatch calls, and marching forward till we get those finished. So anyone who wants to join in and listen, pick apart, whatever, that's what we're doing.
Awesome. Awesome. And don't forget, guys, as soon as something comes out regarding Stephen, like a filing or something like that, we'll do a special podcast. So
Yeah.
we'll keep you in tune. Don't worry, we're not forgetting Stephen, but I believe that the straw that's going to break the camel's back is Brendan Dassey's case.
And I've changed our end screen for while we're doing the Brendan podcast. I'm going to put it up now, and it's of Brendan's shoes. It's an evidence photo. I just went through and was thinking, you know, what could we do that's a little bit different? Standing in Brendan's shoes. That just kind of stuck with me. So,
yeah,
be it what it may, it's pretty tragic, but this is where he was, so we should stand there too.
Correct. I think we all need to travel that journey with him. I think that's very, very important. Yep, that's very adept. Yep. Thank you, Jack61. Just Rhonda, what about yourself?
Oh, well,
Talk about coming into a whirlwind, huh?
yeah. Well, like everybody has said, you know, Brendan's situation is particularly heartbreaking. As most people know, I have 5 sons myself, and my boy mom heart breaks for Barb, because I can't imagine how I would have handled something, you know, so tragic as what she's continues to go through, and the rest of the family as well.
Yes.
But I don't know, and I'm not just singling it out, and not that we're any different, but boy moms, you know, like girl dads, for me anyway, being a boy mom is, boys just have a special place for their mom, you know, right. Yeah. So, you know, it's always heartbreaking. It's going to be heartbreaking, but none of this is easy. And because it's breaking our hearts and making us so fervently angry doesn't mean that we should not be covering it for the rest of the world to, you know, to see and hear, you know,
yes,
the deep rooted parts of, you know, things that, you know, aren't out there, or that the mainstream media won't, won't show.
No.
Because they can't, you know, they cannot be ruining or wrecking or, you know, messing up their whole narrative, you know, to save a young man. That would not be good for them. So it is heartbreaking, but it does have to be done, unfortunately. So to kind of switch, another mother whose heart is literally breaking in the same exact ways, I would imagine, is the mother of Daniel Holtzclaw. She's also living with her son, her only son, being in prison for 263 years for crimes that he did not commit either. And that's the case that most of you probably know. That's the case that I cover pretty much exclusively on my channel. And so we're about another week, maybe 2 into trial transcripts from one of his accusers that we've been covering. Her case, her accusations are so complex and so twisted. It's taking us, I don't know, what has it been, you guys, 6 weeks or more? I mean, I just started a playlist of just her storyline.
It's
and
crazy.
it's insane to try, first of all, for us to try to figure it out and pick it apart and make it make sense. And then reading the trial transcripts has been very what's the word, very enlightening, shocking, telling about how this one particular person accused him of things. And then which I usually always include, and it's on my community page a couple of times, it's definitely in my videos, during her civil lawsuit deposition, federal civil rights lawsuit deposition, she completely, I don't want to say recanted, because recanted isn't the right word, but she completely says the opposite of what she testifies to and what's in her police report
It's
through the
just
whole
a
thing.
mess.
Yeah, it's insane. So moms of sons, moms of anybody, but moms of boys, moms of their boys, man, it's just, I can't imagine it. So I feel for Barb and for Kimiko Holtzclaw for what they are also living through with their sons in prison for crimes they didn't commit. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, I would encourage you to do that. Yeah. We talked late Wednesday night. When I went to bed late Wednesday night, we had 598 subscribers.
Fantastic.
And when I got up on Thursday morning, live stream time, we had jumped up to 600. So I'm at a nice round number now of 600. So if you watch, Jack also streams it to Foul Play every week as well. And I appreciate that more than anybody knows. But if you're watching regularly from Foul Play, what we're doing for Daniel's case, you might as well just come over and subscribe to my channel and just watch it from my channel, chat in my channel.
Jump in, the water's warm, I promise.
Yeah. And I realize, I know Scoob has said it several times, that she just can't take on anymore right now, another wrongful conviction case or another trial case. And I completely understand that. I really do. And I don't expect people to come every week and listen. But if you can, of course, it's 100% appreciated. But if you can't, just come in and, give it a thumbs up, if you will. Maybe make a brief comment in the comment section. My goal with my channel is not how many subscribers I get and not if I can monetize or not. But my goal of my channel is bringing more awareness to this horrible wrongful conviction case. That's the goal of my channel. Yes. So anyway, I need to get off the topic. Otherwise I could talk for 2 more hours about it. So thank you to everybody who helps me. Thank you to everybody from Foul Play who has joined my channel and my Discord, and who truly are, interested also in Daniel's case. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Just Rhonda.
Well, you bet.
And all of us appreciate your hard work. And I think you hit the nail on the head about why some people can't invest their time, total devotion, is because the cases that we do just blow your mind. And a lot of people have asked me, oh, have you studied this case? Have you studied this case? I've deliberately not. I mean, I've done some stuff on Daniels and I do follow it. And I even gave some input about the DNA as well. But that's such a tragic case because there were so many accusers. It's just huge, absolutely huge, the mess of that particular case. It's going to take 100 years to unravel, but you're doing it. You're slowly doing it and educating us. And thank you so much for that, Jasronda. We all appreciate it very much. Thank you. I don't recall. Cherie, how are you coming along? And happy birthday, by the way.
Birthday girl.
Well, thank you. I echo what the others have said. I just want to add, I love the way you draw from different sources, reports and transcripts, and the actual interview and everything. It just helps you see things that you don't see when you're looking at it alone, one thing alone. So good job. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that's important too. Rather than just have a casual discussion, oh yeah, this happened or this happened, I think it's very important for people to, and also Jasronda does it too, to provide the primary documents, the primary information, go way beyond what Making a Murderer has ever done, and get to the heart of the matter, to put yourself in Brendan Dassey's shoes, to understand the story that he went through. That's very important. Thank you so much. I don't recall. And finally, we have a Neverly. Neverly, what about your final thoughts?
My final thoughts, echoing what everybody else said, is that as sad and tragic Brendan's situation is, going on almost 20 years, next year it will be 20 years, or since Teresa actually passed away. Whatever happened to her, we don't know. Nobody knows what happened to Teresa. Nobody knows what happened to Teresa definitively. So, as tragic as it is, we just have to, as Dr. Silkman said, I feel like we owe it to Brendan to spread his word and to show to people that he was bamboozled 100% and that he's paying the ultimate price by sitting in prison for all these years. Although he has a possibility of parole, that's not all rainbows and unicorns either. First of all, you're just eligible for it. And then, as far as, please correct me if I'm wrong, the way I understand it is that he would need to register as a sex offender.
Yes, he does.
And he went into prison a virgin.
Definitely.
So make sense out of that.
I believe that.
So
correct.
We are doing this as hard as it is, as emotional as it is, as triggering as it is. So we're doing it, and the more of you are supporting us, we really thank you. It's all appreciated. You know this case, and your comments are helping us to think about other stuff as well and to incorporate it. And that's why the question and answer session at the end of every podcast is very important, because we are communicating with you and you are communicating with us.
Correct.
And I would like to thank Dr. Silkman, a special thanks, because this man has put not only full time into this project that's going to be pretty much like the whole summer, guys. We're talking about months of this. Every Saturday. He's so dedicated, so knowledgeable. And even these PowerPoint slides, that's all him. So I wanted to give it a shout out to Dr. Silkman because he deserves it.
Thank you. And also you, Neverly, and everybody else on the panel. I'm just a small part of a team, a very passionate team. And I believe that Brendan's story is going to touch a lot of hearts, a lot of minds, and it needs to be told. It really there are harsh lessons here for all of us. I've got my daughter who's the same age as Brendan. And to think that maybe if this had happened to my daughter, taken away at 16 and still in prison, Brendan's been in jail more time longer than he was free.
Yeah.
Think about it. He's been in prison longer than he's been on this earth as a free, fun-loving 16-year-old kid. He likes to play computer games, right? Just think about it. And there are
right.
fucking idiots. There are fucking idiots who've got egos that big who can't admit
Yeah.
that they did it wrong. They did this
Yeah.
kid wrong. They can't admit it.
Yeah.
Even today.
And
Because
the ripple effect of Brendan's incarceration
yep,
is just
you got it.
amazing.
Correct. Now I understand the angst with Stephen. Stephen is not liked as a person and never will be. And there is forensic evidence regarding Stephen, although there's been a lot of dispute. But when it comes to Brendan, it's a completely different kettle of fish. And the mere fact that relatively smart adult detectives had to entrap Brendan in order to get to Stephen, and Brendan really did become the sacrificial lamb because they can't let him go. Because if they let Brendan go, it's an admittance of an error. And it's going to have, like you said, Neville, a massive ripple effect starting from the Attorney General down. Heads.
It hobbles the case. Hobbles Stephen's case.
Heads need to roll. And the world needs to know about it. All right.
Yeah, and we appreciate Barb being in chat,
Oh,
answering
absolutely.
questions. This
Yeah, we
must
know
be
it's
horrifying for her,
yeah.
but we
This,
really, really thank you.
and
Yes.
tell him we said hello. I mean, I don't ever
Yes,
talk to Brendan,
please.
but please tell him we said hello, and this is for him.
Yes.
He's got friends.
Yeah. All right, guys. Look, thank you so much. Let us know in your comments whether you've enjoyed the format. We'll be back next week. If you like what we've done, please subscribe. Put your DNA on the thumbs up button and share our podcast. The more people that can hear Brendan's story, Brendan's narrative, the better. Thank you so much. My name is Dr. Silkman. I'm from the Foul Play team. We'll catch you tomorrow on the open mic. Take care, guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Have a good evening, good night. And this has been a Foul Play production.